Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something that might make you pull your blanket a little tighter. You're not just hearing a bedtime story, you're about to live it. Picture this. The year is, well, forget the year. The world hasn't invented calendars yet. It's about 25,000 years ago, and you are lying in a cave on a bed of dried grass that scratches your skin in all the wrong places. Above you, the air is a cold, heavy weight pressing into your chest with every breath. Your blanket is a stiff, musky-smelling animal hide that you share with whoever happened to curl up next to you last night. You probably won't survive this, unless you're a lot tougher than you look. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to almost total darkness. Just the faintest reddish glow from the embers of last night's fire flickering in the center of the cave. The first sensation you're aware of is the cold. Not a polite, maybe I should put on a sweater, cold, but my toes are plotting to abandon my body, kind of cold. Even under the heavy hide, the chill creeps in, slithering across your skin in little icy tendrils. Every breath feels sharp, like inhaling tiny shards of winter. The bedding beneath you is unforgiving. Clumps of coarse grass and maybe a sprinkle of moss for cushioning. It smells of earth, smoke, and a faint hint of mold. And it has the lumpy texture of something that was once soft. A month ago, each time you shift, a faint rustle escapes, and you worry you might wake the person next to you. An older man whose steady, rhythmic breathing tells you he's still somewhere deep in dreamland. Your nose catches the overlapping scents of cave life. The tang of last night's cooking fire, the animal musk of hides, the slightly sour scent of damp stone. There's a dampness in the air you can taste, faint but ever present, like a ghost of the river outside. The walls around you, barely visible, are close enough to make you feel enclosed but high enough to vanish into shadows. Somewhere far above, water drips in a slow, echoing rhythm. You pull the hide tighter around your shoulders, feeling its uneven fur against your cheek. This isn't the plush, uniform softness of a store-bought blanket. This is real, raw hide, with patches of coarse hair and spots where the skin is bare and slightly stiff. You think about the animal it came from, hunted weeks ago, and how its warmth has been recycled into your own survival. Your breath forms faint clouds that dissolve quickly in the cold air. You can hear the soft crackle of embers, their glow lighting up just enough of the cave to outline the bundle of belongings beside you. Flint tools, a leather pouch of dried berries, and your prized possession, a spearhead of chipped flint, wrapped carefully in animal sinew. It's still early. Your body knows it, even if there's no sunlight to confirm it. The air feels heavier before dawn, as if the darkness has weight. Your muscles ache from the previous day, shoulders stiff from carrying game, legs sore from climbing the uneven ground outside. Every small shift in your position sends a dull throb through your calves. This is the life, you know. Comfort is rare, fleeting, and never promised. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. The cave has its own breathing, the sigh of air currents through unseen cracks, the distant plink of dripping water, and the occasional pop of a cooling ember. Beyond that, The layered chorus of the people you share this space with. Slow snores, quiet sniffles, the faint rustle of someone turning in their sleep. You've learned to tell them apart. That heavier snore over there near the wall? That's Torvik, whose beard seems to double as an air filter. The soft whistle near the fire belongs to Nira, who always sleeps curled up like a child, even though she's one of the best hunters in the group. Somewhere in the distance, far outside, you imagine the wind moving through the trees and over the rocks. Yet in here, the cave holds you in a womb-like stillness. Your eyes adjust slowly, picking out shapes. The pile of drying reeds in the corner, a fur-draped form with a baby bundled against her chest, and the faint shimmer of moisture on the walls. Historians still argue whether people of your era preferred caves purely for shelter or also for their strategic vantage points over nearby resources. But lying here, your back pressed against stone, you understand the appeal. It's the one place where the weather can't suddenly turn on you in the middle of the night. And yet, even here, danger isn't far away. A bear might wander in, though the lingering scent of humans and smoke usually keeps them at bay. Rival groups could arrive, seeking shelter or your food stores. That's why you sleep light, every muscle coiled for movement. Even your dreams are tuned to the frequency of survival. The animal hide shifts as someone beside you stirs, pulling away enough to let a sliver of cold air sneak in. You fight the urge to flinch. No need to waste energy, but the discomfort is real. You curl your legs in tighter, tucking your hands under your chest for warmth. Your fingertips trace the rough seams of your tunic, made from stitched skins, the thread still uneven where you repaired a tear 2 weeks ago. Your mind flickers briefly to the world outside the cave. Snow still clings to the shaded hollows, and the frost-covered ground is treacherous before sunrise. The last time you stepped out barefoot in the early light, the shock made you yelp, earning a quiet laugh from Torvik. You told him you were just testing the air like any good hunter would, but the truth is, you forgot your foot wraps. And so, for now, you stay curled in your cocoon of hide and grass, drawing in the smells, the sounds, and the feel of life 25,000 years before microwaves, central heating, or even the wheel. This is the moment before the day begins, suspended between the need for rest and the inevitability of survival. Your eyelids feel heavy, but there's no going back to deep sleep now. The cold keeps you hovering in that half-aware space where every sound and shift in the cave registers in the back of your mind. Somewhere to your right, a child sighs in their sleep, that little murmuring noise that sounds almost like a kitten. A few feet away, someone's shifting around, the sound of grass rustling and a faint cough echoing off the stone. The cough is short and dry, probably just dust in the air. You've all gotten used to it. You think about the fire. It's not entirely out, but the embers are pale and weak, like tiny eyes slowly closing. Fire isn't just warmth here, it's safety. The smoke keeps insects away. The heat keeps you alive through the night, and the light wards off predators who'd rather not risk getting close to humans. You remember the first time you learned to coax dying embers back to life, using your breath just right, feeding it slivers of dry grass, watching it glow until it licked up into a flame. That's the kind of skill that keeps you alive out here. Without it, you're just another piece of meat in the cold. A faint draft snakes through the cave, carrying the sharp scent of pine and something else. Snow, maybe. You've learned to smell the weather, though it's less about scent and more about the subtle change in the air. Sometimes the world outside smells sharper before a storm, like all the scents have been cut with glass. Other times, it's heavy and damp, like the air is weighed down with unshed rain. You shift slightly in your calf cramps. You try to stretch without disturbing the older man beside you, feeling the tug of muscles that are still sore from the climb yesterday. You'd scaled that rocky ridge to check for any sign of reindeer herds, valuable not just for meat, but for hides, sinew, and bone. Your group depends on constant movement and watchfulness, because one missed opportunity can mean a week without proper food. Somewhere in the darkness, a baby cries, sharp at first, then muffled as the mother shifts to soothe it. You know that cry? The baby's been teething for days, gnawing on anything within reach. Leather, fur, even a thin stick once. You almost envy the little one for getting to sleep most of the day while the rest of you hunt, gather, and keep the fire going. But then again, being small and helpless in a world like this is a gamble. You've seen winters where newborns didn't make it. The embers crackle faintly, and you see Torvik stirring. He's rubbing his beard, muttering something under his breath, probably about the cold. He always claims that a real hunter should be able to sleep on bare stone without complaint. Yet here he is, frowning at his bedding like it's betrayed him. You pull your hide up over your nose, breathing in the musk. It's not exactly pleasant, but it's yours, and it's warmer than the air outside it. That's the thing about life here. Comfort is never about softness or luxury. It's about having something that works, whether it's a hide that keeps you from freezing, a spear that can pierce a reindeer's side, or a pouch that won't leak when you store berries. Your mind drifts to a quirky fact you once overheard from an elder. They say if you keep a sprig of dried mint in your sleeping space, it'll keep spirits from stealing your dreams. Whether it's true or not, Mira swears by it. You've caught her tucking little bundles of herbs near her head before sleep. Historians still argue whether people of your time actually believed in dream-stealing spirits or if it was just a poetic way of talking about bad sleep. But either way, you wouldn't mind something to keep your dreams from turning into the usual parade of wolves, storms, and failed hunts. The smell of the fire deepens. More smoke than heat now. And, someone will have to get up soon to feed it. You're torn between pretending to be asleep and just doing it yourself. In this kind of cold, waiting too long means the embers might die for real. And then you'd be fumbling with flint in the dark, trying to spark a flame with numb fingers. Your stomach gives a low growl. Not loud enough to wake anyone, but enough to remind you of yesterday's meal. Strips of smoked meat, a handful of nuts, and some dried berries from the stash. It was enough to keep you going, but your body is already planning for the next hunt, the next meal. That's the rhythm here. You're always either recovering from a hunt or preparing for the next one. The shadows in the cave seem to shift as your eyes adjust even more. You can make out the shapes of tools laid out neatly on a flat rock. Flint knives, bone awls, a hammerstone. They're not just objects, they're the lifeline of the group. Lose your tools, and you might as well hand yourself over to the wolves. You remember the last time someone dropped a flint knife into the river by accident. There was no time to make a new one before the day's hunt, so they had to share, slowing everyone down. It wasn't the sort of mistake that got you punished, but it earned you a few days of pointed silence from the rest of the group. The cold air feels sharper now, and, dawn is approaching. It's strange, but the chill always deepens just before sunrise. as if the night is making one last push before giving way to light. You curl tighter in your hide, half hoping someone else will be the one to feed the fire. Still, your eyes keep drifting toward those pale embers, willing them to hold on just a little longer. You're not ready to move yet, but you know you will. You always do. Survival isn't about wanting to act. It's about knowing when you have to. And right now, with the cave holding its breath around you, you're counting the moments before you break the stillness and start the day. Eventually, the soft glow of the embers wins your silent staring contest. You sigh, entangling yourself from the animal hide with the kind of slow, reluctant care usually reserved for stepping into icy water. The cold hits instantly, biting at your exposed skin like tiny, invisible teeth. You pull your tunic tighter, tucking it in at the waist to keep whatever warmth you still have from leaking out. Your bare feet press into the rough, chilled surface of the cave floor, the texture a mix of packed dirt and scattered grit. It's not just unpleasant, it's a little risky, too. You know from experience that even a small cut could mean trouble in this world, where infection can end a life faster than hunger. Still, you move quietly, careful not to trip over the scattered tools or sleeping bodies in the dim light. Kneeling beside the fire pit, you feel the faintest radiating warmth on your hands. The embers are pale, their glow pulsing softly like the last heartbeat of a dying creature. You reach for a bundle of dried grass and splinters of pine kindling, kept close by for exactly this purpose. You arrange them with practiced precision, the way you've been taught. Grass first, then the finer twigs, then the slightly thicker sticks on top. The order matters. Skip it, and you'll end up with smoke and no flame. You lean in and blow gently, feeling your own breath curl back at you with the smoky tang of wood. A tiny lick of flame catches, flickers, and then, with a little more coaxing, begins to climb up through the dry grass. The sight is oddly satisfying, like solving a puzzle with your hands. The fire crackles quietly, spreading its warmth in a fragile halo. The change in the air is immediate. The cave feels just a little less oppressive, the shadows softer, the damp scent of stone replaced with the sharper, cleaner aroma of burning pine. You place a few thicker sticks onto the growing flames, knowing they'll carry the fire until someone else takes over. This isn't a one-person job. Fire is everyone's responsibility, and no one forgets that. From behind you, there's a faint groan. Torvik again, probably relieved you handled the task. He mumbles something that could be good work, or could just be him stretching his jaw. Either way, you don't expect gratitude. Keeping the fire alive is as routine here as breathing. You settle back onto your bedding, now infused with a faint wave of warmth from the revived flames. It's not much, but it's enough to make the hide less stiff and the air less biting. For a brief moment, you allow yourself the small luxury of leaning into that comfort. But of course, your mind doesn't rest. It wanders into practical thoughts. How much wood you have left in the stash? Whether today will be good for hunting or if you should focus on gathering, and whether the weather outside is turning. The last time you ignored the signs, you found yourself caught in a windstorm so fierce it sandblasted the skin off your knuckles. You remember something one of the elders told you about fire. Treat it like a friend who will leave you if ignored. You didn't understand the poetry of it at first, but now it makes perfect sense. A fire demands attention, and in return, it keeps you alive. It's one of those unspoken pacts humans have made with nature. You let your gaze wander across the cave, noticing how the firelight brings certain shapes into focus. the curve of a sleeping child's cheek, the jagged edge of a spearhead, the sheen of fat curing on a rack near the wall. Life here is built out of hundreds of these small, ordinary scenes, each one carrying the quiet weight of survival. Off to your left, Nira stirs, her hair spilling over her face like a curtain. She pulls her own hide tighter and gives you a quick, drowsy glance before closing her eyes again. You wonder if she's dreaming of anything better than this, or if she's too practical for that. The air is warming now, enough that you can stretch out your legs without flinching. The ache in your muscles is still there, a dull, steady reminder of yesterday's climb and the heavy load you carried back. Some days, you almost convince yourself the soreness feels good, like proof that you've done something worth the effort. Other days, like today, it's just another obstacle between you and the work ahead. You reach for your leather pouch, feeling its rough surface under your fingertips. Inside are a few precious items. 2 small flint shards for striking sparks, a strip of smoked meat you've been saving, and a sliver of obsidian so sharp it could slice through hide with almost no pressure. Obsidian is rare around here, and you guard it carefully. Historians still debate whether your people traded for such materials over long distances or stumbled upon them in scattered deposits. Either way, it's valuable, both as a tool and as a sign of your group's resourcefulness. Your stomach rumbles again, and you consider taking a bite of the meat, but you stop yourself. Morning is still young, and, better than to start the day without a plan for when you'll eat again. Food here is like warmth. You use it carefully, always aware that more may not come as easily as you hope. The fire's crackle has grown steady now, and the faint hum of life in the cave picks up. Someone coughs softly. Another person shifts to sit up. The transition from night to day is never loud, but it's unmistakable. A slow stirring that moves from one body to another, like the cave itself is waking. And you, sitting here with warmed feet and calloused hands, are part of that motion. The day is coming whether you want it or not. Your role is simple. Keep moving, keep tending, keep surviving. Out here, that's the only kind of comfort that lasts. The cave is starting to feel alive in that quiet ripple through the group way mornings always begin. You hear the soft creak of sinew as someone stretches, the gentle flap of a hide being lifted, and a muted laugh from the far side, probably 2 of the younger ones joking about whose turn it is to fetch water. The embers you coaxed into flame are now casting a golden glow across the uneven walls, revealing details you couldn't see in the darkness. Scratches from tools used to smooth a patch of floor, faint stains from past meals, and even a small handprint on the wall, maybe left there seasons ago by a child whose palm was smeared with ochre. You shift your bedding into a neater pile, brushing away the stray bits of grass that stuck to your tunic overnight. The hide still holds some warmth from your body, but it's already cooling fast, a reminder that nothing here stays comfortable for long. You fold it loosely and set it aside, freeing your arms to start the slow ritual of morning. First comes checking your feet. Yes, your feet. Out here, they are your lifeline. You rub at your toes, flexing them, making sure there's no cut, blister, or frostbite starting to creep in. The stone floor steals heat faster than you can generate it, and one careless moment could turn a small injury into a March-ending disaster. Satisfied, you pull on your foot wraps, strips of softened hide that smell faintly of smoke and pine resin from being dried by the fire. Next, your hands. You stretch your fingers wide, feeling the stiffness from the previous day's work. You glance toward your spearhead, still wrapped in sinew and resting safely near the wall. Today you'll need it sharp, whether for hunting, defending, or simply cutting through stubborn plant stems. You run a thumb along its edge, careful not to press too hard, and feel the subtle catch where it might need reflaking soon. Around you, more voices begin to rise, a low hum of conversation in the half-light, broken by the occasional short laugh. Someone is feeding the fire again, this time with thicker branches that send a satisfying crackle into the air. The smoke curls upward toward the narrow crevice in the ceiling, finding its way out the same way it has for generations. You watch it for a moment, tracing its path until it disappears into shadow. There's a comfort in these patterns, waking, tending, preparing. It's not glamorous, but it's what keeps everyone alive. Historians still argue whether early humans followed a strict division of labor or if tasks shifted fluidly based on need. From your place here in the cave, it's clear enough. Everybody works, and everybody does what they're best at. No one survives by clinging to one role alone. Your stomach makes itself known again, a low, steady growl. You allow yourself a small piece of the smoked meat from your pouch, chewing slowly, letting the salty, smoky flavor fill your mouth. It's tough, almost leathery, but you savor it, knowing how much work went into every bite. The hunt, the butchering, the curing, the careful storage. This isn't a snack. It's the product of days of effort. The baby starts crying again, louder this time, the sound bouncing off the stone walls. The mother rocks gently, humming a low tune that seems more vibration than melody. It works. The wails soften into small hiccups. You've always found it oddly reassuring, that hum. It's the sound of continuity, of a voice that says without words, "We've done this before, and we'll do it again." From outside the cave's mouth, a faint light begins to press in, not the warm blaze of full daylight, but the cool, pale glow of early morning. It stretches across the ground like a thin sheet, catching on the damp edges of stone. Along with it comes the sound of wind moving through bare branches, carrying the faint scent of frost. You rise slowly, rolling your shoulders to work out the stiffness. The air outside is still knife-sharp, but you'll be stepping into it soon. Before you do, you make one more sweep of your small belongings. Pouch, spearhead, the coil of sinew you've been saving, and a thin strip of hide you use as a belt. Everything is in its place. Out here, misplacing even a single item can mean hours of extra work, or worse. A thought flickers at the edge of your mind. The day hasn't truly begun yet, but already the rhythm of survival is turning its gears. You're not just waking, you're stepping into a role that's been played for tens of thousands of years. You can almost feel the weight of those who came before you, moving through the same motions, hearing the same morning sounds, smelling the same blend of smoke, earth, and cold air. One last glance at the fire. It's strong now, flames licking at the thicker wood, the heart of the cave beating steadily. You take a slow breath, letting the warmth brush your face, before turning toward the mouth of the cave. There's work to be done, and the cold outside isn't going to wait for you to feel ready. You step forward, hide belt cinched, feet wrapped, mind already cataloging the tasks ahead. The scratchy grass bedding, the bone-chilling air, the smoky, earthy scents. All of it fades into the background as you move toward the day. The first thing that greets you as you near the mouth of the cave is the echoing drip of water from somewhere above. It's a steady, deliberate sound. Plop, plop, plop. Each drop hitting stone and sending out a faint, hollow ring. Your ears are still tuned to the subtle acoustics of this place. In a cave, sound doesn't just exist. It travels, curls around corners, and sometimes returns to you softer, as if it's been smoothed down by the air itself. You step toward the faint light and pause just before the threshold. The chill from outside rushes in to meet you, sharper than the air inside, but somehow cleaner too. The smell is different here. Less smoke, more moss and damp earth, laced with a hint of pine from the surrounding forest. Mixed into it is something metallic, faint but familiar, the scent of frost melting on stone. Behind you, the cave continues its own morning symphony. Torvik's low, rumbling snores are fading now, replaced by the whisper of conversation between two women still wrapped in their hides. A baby lets out a startled cry, probably disturbed by the sound of a bird calling from outside. The cry bounces off the walls and returns softer, as though the cave itself is trying to soothe it. You lower yourself to sit on a flat stone near the entrance, rubbing your calves slowly. The soreness there feels like a ledger of yesterday's effort. The climbing, the crouching, the uneven ground underfoot. Your shoulders ache too, a deep muscular throb that only comes from carrying heavy loads slung over your back. That's the tax of life here. Every calorie you earn is bought with the currency of sore muscles and stiff joints. A sudden flutter of wings catches your attention. Up in the shadows near the cave ceiling, a small bird darts out into the light. You watch it disappear against the pale morning sky, wondering briefly if it's heading toward the same berry bushes you sometimes gather from. Birds often know before you do when the food supply is good, or when it's gone. You lean back slightly, letting your palms press into the cold stone, and take in the sounds filtering in from outside. Beneath the dripping water and faint rustle of wind, you can hear the distant calls of other birds. Some high and sharp, others low and drawn out. Each sound tells you something different. A sharp, repetitive call could mean a predator nearby. A slow, steady trill might signal calm weather ahead. Out here, you're always listening, even when you think you're resting. The ache in your feet is still there from the long trek back yesterday. You can feel the tender spots where the foot traps rubbed a little too tightly. Nothing serious, yet, but you make a mental note to adjust them before heading out again. In your world, small discomforts have a nasty habit of turning into dangerous problems if you ignore them. From deeper in the cave comes a new sound. A pot being set onto a flat rock near the fire. The faint clink of stone against stone is followed by the whisper of water being poured in. Someone's starting the morning brew, a hot drink made from steeped herbs and roots. It's bitter, sometimes too bitter, but it warms the body and clears the mind. You know that later, when it's ready, the warm steam will curl up into your face, carrying that sharp, earthy scent that somehow feels like a promise you can keep. There's a rhythm to all of this. The drip of water, the shifting of bedding, the occasional burst of laughter when someone says something quietly funny. In the modern world, mornings are often full of alarms, clocks, and rushing. Here, they're slower but more demanding. Every action is deliberate, each sound part of a larger pattern you've come to rely on. Your eyes wander to the far wall, where faint carvings mark the stone. They're not elaborate, just lines, shapes, maybe some kind of tally. Historians still argue whether markings like these were purely decorative served as primitive record keeping, or carried some spiritual meaning. You don't dwell on it too much. But every now and then, you wonder if one day someone will stand here, running their fingers over these grooves, and think about the people who made them. The baby's cries have softened now, replaced by a series of small, hiccuping breaths. The mother hums again, the same tune as before. It blends with the other sounds until it becomes part of the cave's background noise. Steady, familiar, almost invisible. As you sit, the earthy smell from the damp walls seems stronger than before. You trace a line of moisture with your fingertips, feeling the cool slickness of it. Some say this water is safe to drink, purified by its long journey through stone. Others caution against it, claiming it can carry sickness. You've done both, drunk it without trouble, and also gotten ill afterward. Like many things here, the truth isn't consistent, and survival often means trusting your instincts more than hard rules. The morning outside is brightening, and you can see more detail now. The glint of frost on low shrubs, the pale silhouettes of bare trees, the faint blue haze in the distance where the forest begins. The world out there is both inviting and hostile, and you'll be stepping into it soon. For now, you sit and let the sounds, the scents, and the feel of the cold air remind you of exactly where you are. A small human in a vast, indifferent world, holding on to warmth in the stone belly of the earth. A shift in the cave's air tells you more people are waking. The subtle warmth from the fire drifts further now, mixing with the faint herbal scent of the morning brew. You watch Nira emerge from her bedding, hair tangled, rubbing her face like she's trying to wipe the dreams away. She gives you a brief nod. No words yet, just the unspoken acknowledgement that you've both made it through another night. Somewhere in the corner, Torvik groans and stretches, his arms arching high over his head. His joints pop audibly, followed by a muttered, colder than last year's bones, which earns a small laugh from one of the younger hunters. His sarcasm has a way of making the morning feel a little less heavy, though, he's already calculating the day's work in his head. The echoes in the cave start to layer. A child's giggle from near the fire, the clink of stone tools being gathered, the quiet splash of water being ladled from a skin into the pot. It's the prehistoric version of breakfast noise. No clattering plates, no sizzling pans. Just the muted efficiency of people who know exactly what needs to be done. Your own body protests when you stand. The stiffness in your thighs and calves reminds you that yesterday wasn't just about climbing. There had been the return trek, burdened with meat and gathered firewood, each step a negotiation between endurance and gravity. You press your palms into your thighs as you straighten, feeling the muscles slowly agree to move again. The light outside grows stronger, pouring in as a muted silver glow. You can make out more of the landscape now. The narrow slope leading down from the cave, the tangle of roots gripping the rock face, the faint tracks left by something small, maybe a hare, during the night. Reading tracks is second nature here, and you tuck that observation away in your mind. A hare could be dinner tonight, if the day goes well. A short, high-pitched bird call rings out from somewhere in the trees beyond. You pause, listening. That call means movement in the undergrowth, not danger but activity, possibly other animals stirring for the day. The ability to interpret such signals isn't some mystical sixth sense. It's simply what happens when your life depends on noticing patterns most people never think to look for. By the fire, someone stirs the pot of morning brew with a carved bone ladle. The liquid inside is dark, almost black, with a sharp, earthy smell. It's a mix of boiled roots and dried leaves, some of which grow far from here and must be gathered during longer excursions. It's not a pleasant drink by modern standards, bitter enough to make your tongue curl, but it warms the stomach and clears the fog from your mind. You'll take a cup when it's ready. The sound of dripping water picks up slightly as if the warming air outside is coaxing more melt from the stone. Each plink echoes with a crisp clarity, bouncing off the walls and layering with the other morning sounds. You realize just how much the cave's acoustics help you keep track of life here. You could tell if someone were approaching from outside long before they arrived, simply by the way the sound shifts. You move to your small pile of belongings again, checking them out of habit. The leather pouch is intact, the obsidian shard is still there, and your flint tools remain wrapped in their hide sleeve. You turn over the flint in your hands, feeling the edges. It will need resharpening soon, but not today. Stone tools have a kind of silent personality. They tell you when they're ready for work and when they need care. A small, almost comical scene catches your attention. One of the children has picked up a long stick and is poking at the drying hides hanging near the wall. Their mother swats at them gently, scolding with a quiet hiss. The hides are too important to be handled carelessly. They're not just for clothing but for shelter repairs, carrying food, and even making cords or containers when cut and treated properly. Historians still argue whether groups like yours kept strict seasonal routines or adapted entirely to what each day brought. In your experience, it's both. There's the broad rhythm, the knowledge that winter means more hunting and fewer plants, that spring brings certain roots and shoots. But there's also the constant day-to-day adjustment based on what the land gives you. You step closer to the cave entrance, letting your eyes adjust to the outside brightness. The frost on the shrubs glistens now, tiny prisms catching the early light. The air smells sharper out here, almost sweet in its coldness. You take a deep breath, feeling it sting your lungs in a way that's oddly energizing. Behind you, Torvik makes his way toward the entrance, pulling his fur-lined wrap around his shoulders. "Smells like a good day for tracking," he says without looking at you, scanning the slope below. You don't answer. He's not really asking for your opinion, just voicing his own early judgment. Still, you file it away. If Torvik's in the mood to track, there's a good chance you'll be heading out together. The pot by the fire begins to release more steam, carrying the bitter herbal scent further into the cave. Soon, someone will start ladling it into cups. Simple, hollowed-out pieces of bone or hardened gourd shells. You can already imagine wrapping your hands around one, letting the heat sink into your fingers before taking that first bracing sip. It's not comfort in the modern sense, but in this life, it's close enough. For now, though, you linger at the threshold, one foot in the shadowed safety of the cave, the other almost ready to step into the cold, unpredictable world beyond. The sounds behind you and ahead of you weave together, the domestic murmurs of the group and the wild, distant calls of the land. And in between those two worlds, you take another breath and prepare to meet the day. The first cup of the morning brew is yours almost by accident. You happen to be near the fire when the ladle dips in, and Nira presses the hollowed gourd into your hands without a word. The heat seeps instantly into your palms, and you close your fingers around it as if afraid the warmth might escape. The steam rises in lazy curls, carrying that sharp, earthy scent you know so well. It's bitter, yes, but the bitterness is tied to wakefulness, to readiness. You take a slow sip, letting it sit on your tongue for a moment before swallowing. The taste is harsh, but it spreads heat through your chest, and your muscles seem to loosen slightly in response. You blow gently across the surface and take another sip. It's not exactly a pleasure, but it's a signal to your body, to your mind, that the day has officially begun. Around the fire, people are settling into their own small rituals. One woman is braiding a length of sinew into cord. Two of the older men are examining a set of spear shafts, testing them for straightness and flex. A teenager sits cross-legged, using a flint scraper to thin a piece of hide. Each motion is deliberate, each task performed without wasted movement. Out here, energy is a precious resource. You don't burn it without purpose. The drip of water in the cave hasn't stopped. You notice it's faster now, the result of rising temperatures outside melting whatever ice had clung to the rock overnight. You can almost guess the time by it, before the sun has fully risen, but after its first warmth begins touching the stone. You take a long, slow breath, letting the cool air fill your lungs. From the entrance, you can hear faint bird chatter mixing with the occasional rustle of small animals moving in the brush. You've learned to separate the harmless noises from the ones that demand attention. A sudden, sharp burst of wing beats, for example, means something startled them, possibly a predator. This morning, though, the sounds are easy, unhurried. Torvik crouches by the entrance, his eyes scanning the slope and the forest beyond. He doesn't speak, but he's mapping possible routes in his head. You've done the same, mentally tracing the paths you might take, noting where the shadows will fall later, remembering which trails have been most reliable for finding signs of deer or boar. You sip again from your cup, feeling the liquid's warmth linger in your belly. It's easy to forget, in the quiet of the cave, that the cold outside is still biting. You've made the mistake before, stepping out without enough preparation, thinking the fire's heat would carry you further than it could. The truth is, cold in this world is patient. It waits, and it works its way in slowly until you notice your fingers are stiff, your toes numb. A burst of laughter comes from the group near the wall. One of the younger boys has apparently tripped over his own bedding while trying to carry a bundle of sticks to the fire. He's laughing too, cheeks flushed, and the moment passes without scolding. Everyone knows mistakes happen, and this one was harmless. But you also know the difference between harmless and costly mistakes here is often a matter of timing. The air feels drier now as the fire continues to burn steadily, its smoke thinning into a faint haze. You watch it swirl and drift toward the ceiling crack, carrying with it the scent of pine resin and charred wood. You think briefly about how fire must have felt to the first people who saw it, whether they feared it more than they revered it, or if they instantly recognized it as a tool worth mastering. Historians still argue over whether early humans stumbled upon fire by chance from natural causes or learned to make it intentionally far earlier than we have evidence for. Sitting here with your cup, you're just grateful someone figured it out. The baby stirs again, but this time it's not crying, just cooing softly, fascinated by the flicker of flames. The mother watches with a tired smile, one hand resting on the child's chest. There's something grounding about the sight, a reminder that survival isn't just about today. It's about ensuring tomorrow has someone to carry it forward. You finish the last of your drink and set the cup down, feeling the lingering warmth in your hands. The sounds of preparation are picking up, wood being shifted, hides rustling, the occasional thud of a tool hitting stone. The day's rhythm is gathering momentum. Your eyes flick toward the mouth of the cave again. The light is shifting from silver to pale gold now, catching in the frost so it glitters faintly. You know that soon someone will call for a group to head out, whether for hunting, gathering, or both. You'll need to be ready, which means checking your foot wraps again, adjusting your belt, and making sure the obsidian shard is still secured. For a moment, you allow yourself the luxury of leaning back against the wall, closing your eyes, and listening. The drip of water, the soft murmurs of your people, the distant calls from the forest. They weave together into something almost musical. It's not the kind of music you'd ever dance to, but it's the soundtrack of survival, and it's been playing for longer than anyone can remember. Torvik finally speaks, his voice low but carrying through the cave. We should move soon. Tracks will be fresh. It's not a command, not exactly, but when he says it, people listen. You know, he's right. The longer you wait, the more likely wind or sunlight will erase the signs you're looking for. The group's small morning rituals shift into a more purposeful hum. The two older men by the fire put aside their spears and start securing them with straps. Mira stands, brushing ash from her knees, and heads toward the entrance to check the weather with her own eyes. A few of the younger ones scramble to finish tying their foot traps, their movements quick but practiced. You gather your own things methodically. The leather pouch goes at your side, tied with a double knot. The obsidian shard, carefully wrapped, slides into the fold of your belt where it won't dig into your skin as you walk. You test your spear's point with a thumb, sharp enough to pierce hide, not so brittle that it will snap on impact. Tools are extensions of you. If they fail, it's often because you failed to care for them. The cave's sounds are now a mix of the domestic and the anticipatory. The baby's coos have turned into a soft babble, ignored by everyone too focused on their own preparations. The dripping water still echoes, a steady metronome under the shifting footsteps and muted chatter. You feel your own heartbeat syncing with that rhythm. Outside, the light has deepened to a clear, cold gold. You can see the frost melting along the lower branches of the shrubs, the droplets catching the sunlight as they fall. You glance down the slope and spot fresh impressions in the earth, not deep enough for a large animal, but recent. Maybe hare, maybe fox. Both are worth attention, though for different reasons. Nira returns, pulling her fur wrap tighter. Clear skies, she says simply. That's good news. No sudden snowstorm waiting to catch you halfway through the day. But it also means animals will be more alert, their senses sharpened without the muffling of wind or heavy snowfall. One of the older men hands you a small bundle wrapped in hide. Inside are strips of dried meat, meant to be eaten sparingly through the day. You tuck them away without opening the package, knowing the smell could draw unwanted attention if left exposed. Historians still argue whether groups like yours set out each day with fixed hunting plans or simply followed signs as they found them. From experience, it's a balance. You start with an idea, but the land decides whether you stick to it. Some days you come back with exactly what you sought. Other days, you chase shadows and return with nothing but sore legs and an emptier stomach. Torvik moves toward the entrance first, scanning the slope again before stepping out. You follow a moment later, your breath catching slightly at the change. The cold outside is sharper, but cleaner, and the sunlight paints everything with a strange, pale brightness. The forest below looks both welcoming and wary, as if it's willing to feed you, but only if you prove yourself worthy. From here, the sounds of the cave are muted, just a faint blend of voices and the occasional crackle from the fire. Ahead, The world opens into layers. The rocky slope giving way to frost-tipped shrubs, then bare-limbed trees, then the deeper greens of the forest beyond. You can feel the pull of it, the quiet dare it offers. You glance back once more before the descent. Inside, the fire's glow still flickers against the stone, and the familiar silhouettes of your people move in patterns, by heart. Out here, those patterns will shift into something else. Quieter, sharper, more alert. The first step down is careful, deliberate. The frost makes the ground slick in spots, and you test each foothold before trusting it. Torvik is already a few paces ahead, his eyes scanning constantly. Behind you, the others follow, their movements measured. The cave fades into the background as you move further down, replaced by the sounds of crunching frost underfoot and the distant call of birds announcing your presence to the forest. And just like that, the day has begun in earnest, not with a loud declaration, but with the quiet, inevitable shift from shelter to search, from warmth to the cold reality of the hunt. Your boots, or rather, the layered hide wraps around your feet, sink slightly into the frost-crusted earth as you follow Torvik down the slope. Each step is a negotiation with gravity and texture. The crunch of ice over soil, the occasional give of damp moss hidden beneath the white. The air down here is colder than inside the cave, but it's a cleaner, sharper kind of cold. It slices away the smoky heaviness from your lungs and replaces it with the scent of pine needles and wet stone. The slope flattens into a narrow path, one you've taken enough times to know the turns without thinking. Still, you keep your eyes open for fresh signs, hoof prints, scat, claw marks on the low bark. Tracking isn't about seeing the whole animal in your mind. It's about stringing together tiny, unrelated details until they form a picture. Torvik crouches suddenly, raising a hand to halt the group. He leans close to the ground, tracing something with 2 fingers. You step up behind him and see it, a faint double line in the frost, barely visible unless the light catches it just so. It's the kind of mark a deer's hoof leaves when it slips slightly on frozen ground. It's fresh enough that the frost hasn't yet reformed over the edges. The rest of the group fans out slightly, scanning the surrounding brush. There's no sound of movement beyond the usual morning chorus, birds chattering, a distant woodpecker's rhythmic tap, the soft sigh of wind in the higher branches. Whatever made the track is still ahead, maybe not far. You adjust your grip on the spear, feeling the weight of it balance in your hand. It's not just a weapon, it's a memory of labor, stone shaped against stone for hours, sinew tightened until it sang, shaft straightened over the slow heat of coals. Out here, carrying it feels both comforting and dangerous. Comforting because it gives you a chance. Dangerous because it means you're committed to taking one. The path curves toward a stand of low shrubs, their branches tipped with frost crystals that glitter faintly in the slanting sunlight. You can see where something has brushed through here recently. The frost is broken in uneven patches, some twigs bent down with the weight of a passing body. Torvik points to a tuft of coarse hair snagged on a branch. Dark brown, deer. You exchange a look with him, and no words are needed. The hunt is on, even if you're not yet moving at full speed. In this cold, rushing can be as fatal as waiting too long. A startled deer will bolt far faster than you can give chase, and the terrain favors the animal. Patience here is a weapon. The rest of the group moves with an unspoken rhythm. Mira drifts to the left, keeping low. 2 of the younger hunters move further ahead, testing the air with shallow breaths. You stay just behind Torvik, scanning not just for the animal but for anything else. Roots to trip on, patches of ice, or signs of other predators. The forest here feels older than time. The trees, bare of leaves, still tower with a quiet authority, their bark scarred by years of weather and claw marks from long-gone bears. Underfoot, the frost crunches softly, muffled by fallen needles. The air is still, broken only by those same distant bird calls. Historians still argue whether people in your time viewed these forests as home or merely territory to be used and moved through. Standing here, you think it's both. You belong to it as much as it belongs to you. But neither of you pretends the relationship is safe. Torvik stops again, crouching low. He gestures for you to look. Ahead, in a small clearing, frost has been disturbed in a shallow oval, the shape of a deer's bed. Steam doesn't rise from it, so the animal has been gone at least a short while, but the ground still looks freshly compressed. You lean closer, feeling the faint warmth when your hand hovers over the spot. Minutes, maybe less than an hour. You scan the perimeter, spotting more tracks leading east. The group begins to move again, slower now, careful not to snap twigs or crunch too loudly. Your breathing slows with your steps, every muscle tuned to silence. Even the birds seem to sense the shift. Calls fade, replaced by a watchful quiet. A sudden rustle to your right freezes you in place. Not loud, just a soft movement in the undergrowth. You turn your head slowly, eyes scanning the tangled branches, but see nothing. Torvik glances back at you, eyebrow raised. You shake your head slightly, unsure if it was the deer or something else entirely. Out here, certainty is a luxury. Still, you move forward. The cold presses in closer now, the sunlight barely cutting through the trees. You know that soon you'll reach the stream, one of the deer's favored watering spots. And if the tracks still lead there, you might just have your chance. The forest narrows ahead, funneling you and the others toward a shallow dip in the land. You know this stretch well. It's the corridor leading to the stream. Animals travel it the same way you do, drawn by the water and the relative shelter the trees provide. The ground here is a patchwork of frozen soil and soft, dark earth where the frost never quite takes hold. Torvik slows even more, raising one hand in the signal for silence. The group halts instantly. You listen. At first, there's only the muffled quiet of winter woods. But then, faint and rhythmic, the sound of water trickling over stone. That's the stream. You and Mira exchange a quick glance before dropping to a crouch, moving forward carefully. The air here feels heavier, thicker with the smell of damp leaves and mineral-rich mud. You can taste the difference in the air. There's life here, even if it's hidden. A few more steps, and you see it, a narrow ribbon of water cutting through the frost, its surface catching shards of sunlight that filter through the branches. Thin veils of mist cling to the edges where the warmer water meets the cold air. Along the banks, you spot depressions in the earth. Hoof prints, some fresh, others softened by time. Torvik kneels by the water's edge, dipping 2 fingers into one of the prints. He lifts them, showing the faint sheen of moisture still clinging to the edges. Fresh, very fresh. He points to a cluster of tracks leading upstream, and, without words that the deer is still close. The group adjusts positions. 2 hunters move further ahead, keeping to the cover of the brush. You follow the line of the stream, eyes sweeping the opposite bank for movement. Your spear feels heavier in your hand now, not from weight but from expectation. Then you see it, just a flicker at first, a patch of movement between the trees on the far side of the water. You freeze, narrowing your eyes. There, half hidden behind a fallen trunk, a deer is grazing on the sparse winter shoots near the bank. Its breath forms small clouds in the cold air, ears flicking at the faint sounds of the forest. Torvik spots it too. He makes a slow, deliberate gesture. Half the group will circle around to the far side, the rest will hold here. You're in the holding group, tasked with keeping the animal's attention just enough that it doesn't bolt before the others can close in. The waiting is the hardest part. You stay low, barely breathing, your eyes fixed on the animal. It chews slowly, head lifting every few seconds to scan its surroundings. Once, its gaze sweeps over you, and your heart hammers so loudly you're sure it will hear. But the deer's ears flick once more, and it lowers its head again. Minutes pass in measured silence. You can just make out the faint rustle of the other hunters moving into position on the far side. Your muscles start to ache from holding still, but you don't dare shift. The deer steps forward into the shallows, hooves breaking the thin ice with soft cracks. It drinks, neck stretching low, eyes still scanning. Torvik makes the signal. It's time. The hunters on the far side move first, stepping out from behind their cover. The deer startles, jerking its head up, ears pinned forward. It hesitates, too long. Torvik lunges forward, splashing into the shallows, and you do the same, spear ready. The water bites at your legs, but adrenaline burns the cold away. The deer bolts, but its path is angled toward your side of the stream, exactly what you hoped for. You thrust forward, not to kill but to redirect, the point of your spear grazing its flank. The animal stumbles, giving Nira just enough time to step in from the brush and deliver the killing strike. The moment is quick, almost anticlimactic. 1 second it's a living, breathing shape of muscle and instinct. The next it's still. The group exhales in unison, not in celebration but in relief. A successful hunt means food, clothing, tools. It means survival. You and Torvik haul the deer to the bank. Its weight awkward but manageable between the two of you. The others gather around, checking the kill for signs of disease or injury. None. This one will feed the group well. As you catch your breath, you glance upstream. The mist still clings to the water, and the frost glitters faintly in the sunlight. The scene is quiet again, as if the forest has already absorbed the brief violence into its endless cycle. You'll remember this place when you pass it again, maybe weeks from now, and see no trace of what happened here. The deer lies on its side now, steam rising faintly from its body in the frigid air. The group moves in with a practiced efficiency born from countless hunts before this one. There is no celebration, only the quiet hum of work. Torvik kneels first, drawing a flint blade from his belt. The edge catches a shard of sunlight, sharp enough to split a hair. You crouch opposite him, steadying the deer's foreleg while he makes the first clean incision along the belly. The cut is swift but careful, just deep enough to part skin without piercing too far. Warmth spills out, not in a flood, but in slow waves that push back the cold around your hands. Even in this life, that sudden heat is startling. Nira steps in with her own knife, working at the hind legs. She hums under her breath. Not a song, exactly, more like a low, rhythmic vibration that keeps her hands steady. Two of the younger hunters stand by, ready to carry organs or parts as they're removed. Every scrap will be used. Nothing in this world is wasted without consequence. You slide your blade along the inner hide, separating it from the muscle beneath. It's tedious work, but your movements are efficient. The hide will be needed for repairs, patching bedding, reinforcing wraps, maybe even crafting a new pouch if the group is lucky. You think about the ones already drying back at the cave, their smell of smoke and fat still strong in the air. Once the skin is freed from the body, it's folded carefully, fur side in, to keep it clean. A younger hunter takes it, tucking it under their arm like something fragile. Meanwhile, Torvik removes the organs with the same deliberate care, placing the heart, liver, and kidneys into separate pouches. The heart, still faintly warm, is considered valuable not just for food but for what it symbolizes, strength passed from prey to hunter. The scent here is strong, a mix of iron-rich blood, cold earth, and the faint sweetness of crushed winter plants. You've long since stopped reacting to it with the sharp recoil you felt as a child. Now it's just another part of the sensory landscape, as familiar as the smell of smoke in the cave. Once the major work is done, the carcass is sectioned for easier carrying. Torvik takes the heavier portion, Mira the next, and you shoulder what remains, a hindquarter wrapped in the hide's edge to keep it clean. The weight settles against your spine, an immediate reminder of the long walk back ahead. Historians still argue whether prehistoric hunts like this were more communal events with large groups or small, precise teams. From where you stand, the answer is obvious. You bring the number of people you need to get the job done and no more. Too few, and the risk is high. Too many, and the return trip becomes a logistical mess. The stream gurgles quietly beside you, a strange contrast to the silent labor of butchery. The water's surface is almost mirror smooth again, broken only by the occasional drift of a fallen leaf. It's as if the land is already resetting itself, erasing the evidence of what's just happened. You take one last look at the clearing before turning to leave. The only signs of the hunt are the dark patches on the snow and the flattened grass where the deer fell. In a day or two, frost and wind will erase even those. Nature doesn't hold on to moments. It moves on, and you must too. The group retraces its steps along the stream, moving more slowly now under the burden of the meat. The sunlight has climbed higher, filtering through the bare branches in pale, broken beams. The frost is starting to soften, the ground beneath growing slick in spots. You tread carefully, mindful that one wrong step could send you and your precious cargo into the freezing water. When the stream curves away from the path home, you break off, climbing the slope back toward the forest interior. Every few minutes, Torvik glances back to check the spacing between the group. Mira hums again, softly this time, the sound barely audible over the crunch of frost underfoot. The smell of the meat clings to you now, warm and faintly metallic. It's both a comfort and a danger. Comfort because it promises food, danger because it could draw scavengers. The sooner you reach the safety of the cave, the better. Still, there's a quiet satisfaction in the air, a shared understanding that the day's most critical task has already been met. The rest of the journey will be long, but it will be lighter in spirit than the trek out. You brought something back that will matter. Not just tonight, but for days to come. The forest path home feels different now. The same trees, the same frost-tipped shrubs, but the burden of fresh meat changes the way your senses work. You're alert in a new way. Not hunting, but guarding. Every sound in the undergrowth could be a scavenger catching the scent. Torvik keeps a steady pace at the front, his broad frame and sure footing making the climb look easier than it is. You stay a few paces behind, adjusting your grip on the hide-wrapped quarter over your shoulder. The weight pulls at your back, each step sending a dull ache through your spine. Still, it's a good kind of pain, the kind that promises full bellies later. The ground is thawing in places now, the sun's warmth loosening the frost into slick patches of mud. Your feet make a wet, sucking sound in the softer spots, and every time you lift a foot, you check that the wrap hasn't shifted. Losing even a small piece of the load here would mean backtracking, and with the temperature still low, slowing down too much could sap everyone's strength. A faint wind stirs the branches above, carrying the smell of the meat out ahead of you. You all know what that means. You're no longer the only ones aware of what you carry. You glance at Nira. She's already scanning the trees with that measured, alert way she has. No panic, just readiness. The group reaches a narrow ridge where the forest falls away to your right, opening into a long view of the valley. You pause for a breath and see a scattering of movement far below. Small shapes darting between the undergrowth. Could be hares, could be something watching you. Either way, you don't linger. Historians still argue whether people of your era viewed predators as constant enemies or simply as competitors in the same game. Living here, it's hard not to see them as both. Wolves, in particular, will shadow you for miles if they smell meat, waiting for you to tire or make a mistake. The trail curves upward again, forcing you to lean forward against the slope. Your calves burn, but the sight of the higher ground ahead gives you a small burst of energy. The higher you go, the safer you feel. Predators don't like to work harder than they need to, and the cave's position makes it a defensible point. By the time you crest the final rise, the familiar dark mouth of the cave is visible through the trees. Smoke curls faintly from the narrow vent in the rock above, proof that the fire has been kept alive in your absence. The sight brings a small, quiet relief. Returning to a cold cave after a hunt is a misery you've experienced before, and you don't care to repeat it. The last stretch is easier. The ground here is more solid, the frost less patchy. You shift the quarter of meat from one shoulder to the other, feeling the muscles in your neck relax slightly. The others do the same, each person adjusting their load in the final push home. When you step into the shadow of the cave's entrance, the air changes instantly, cooler, denser, tinged with the smell of smoke and damp stone. The low murmur of voices greets you before your eyes adjust to the dimness. Figures move toward you, some to take the meat, others to offer water. You pass your share to a younger member of the group, their arms straining under the weight but face set with determination. The load disappears into the deeper part of the cave where it will be processed. The noise inside swells, a mix of curiosity, hunger, and relief. As you stand there catching your breath, the sounds of the forest outside fade into the background, replaced by the familiar cave chorus. The pop of the fire, the rustle of hides, the murmur of people talking over each other. The cold still clings to your skin, but inside, the steady heat from the hearth begins to work its way back into your bones. You've closed the circle, left with empty hands, returned with something to fill them. The day is far from over, but the hardest part, the part where you chase what you can't yet hold, is done. The rest will be work you can do within the safety of stone walls, surrounded by your people. Inside the cave, the shift from travel to work is instant. The meat is carried toward the back, where the floor is slightly sloped for draining fluids, and the air is cooler to slow spoilage. You follow, wiping your hands on a scrap of hide, already thinking ahead to the tasks that come before eating, cutting, dividing, storing. The fire at the center burns steadily, its light bouncing off damp stone and illuminating the low haze of smoke near the ceiling. The smell is heavier here. Smoke, meat, damp earth, and under it all, the faint tang of pine resin from the last batch of wood. It clings to your hair and clothes, so constant you barely notice anymore. Torvik sets down his load first, the heavier front portion of the deer. He grunts, rolls his shoulders, then crouches to begin working on it immediately. His flint knife glides along the muscle with practiced confidence, separating portions that will be cooked tonight from those meant for curing. Mira joins him, her smaller blade more suited for trimming sinew and removing the fine membrane from the meat. You take a hind quarter from one of the younger hunters and place it on a flat rock, testing its surface with your palm. It's cold but dry, perfect for cutting. You slice through the hide, peeling it back to expose the dense muscle beneath. The blade's edge makes a soft, wet sound against the flesh. Each piece you remove is set aside carefully, either for roasting over the fire or drying on the racks near the cave's entrance where smoke can reach them. The rest of the group settles into their roles. One person tends the fire, stoking it to a hotter burn for cooking. Another begins crushing dried herbs and roots in a shallow stone bowl, seasoning for tonight's meal and a preservative for the strips of meat that will be stored. The rhythmic grinding sound blends with the occasional snap of bone and the muted conversation that flows between workers. From the corner, the children watch with wide eyes, whispering to each other. One of the elders gestures for them to come closer, handing them small tasks, sorting usable sinew from scraps, gathering clean leaves for wrapping. You know the value of these moments. Skills aren't taught here in lessons. They're absorbed in the quiet repetition of watching, helping, and repeating. The first bones are split open, releasing the pale, fatty marrow inside. A quick snack, rich in energy, it's passed around in small spoonfuls. The taste is warm and faintly sweet, coating your tongue and easing the edge of hunger before the main meal. Historians still debate whether marrow was considered a delicacy or simply another part of the animal. But in your world, it's both. The sound of dripping water is fainter here at the back of the cave, replaced by the steady rhythm of blades on meat and the low crackle of the fire. Every so often, someone pauses to glance toward the entrance, checking for movement outside. Even here, deep inside your shelter, you never stop being aware of what might come in. A section of the deer's ribs is set over the fire, the fat beginning to sizzle almost immediately. The smell is mouth-watering, sharp and savory, cutting through the damp heaviness of the cave air. It draws everyone's attention for a moment, but no one stops working. Food is better when the rest of the tasks are already done. You finish slicing the last of your quarter into strips for drying, laying them across the rack. The smoke will curl around them slowly over the next day or two, preserving them for weeks. The process is slow, but it means that even if the next hunt fails, you'll have something to fall back on. One of the younger hunters brings over the deer's stomach, cleaned and rinsed. It will be used as a container, lined with fat and hung in a cool, shaded spot. It can hold berries or rendered fat without leaking. You've seen stomachs like this used to carry water over long distances, too. Nothing from the kill goes unused. Hide, bone, meat, fat, sinew, organ, even the hooves can be shaped into tools. Torvik holds up the heart briefly, a small nod to its importance, before slicing it into thin pieces. These will be eaten tonight, quickly roasted, their rich flavor a reward for the effort of the hunt. Mira glances at you, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Not pride exactly, but the recognition of shared work well done. Around you, the hum of activity continues without pause. It's not hurried, but it's steady. The sooner the meat is processed, the less is lost to spoilage or scavengers. The tasks are so ingrained in your body that your hands work almost without thought, leaving your mind free to notice the way the firelight dances on the cave walls, or how the sound of knives on bone forms its own kind of rhythm. The fire pops sharply as a knot in the wood gives way, sending a small spray of sparks into the air. They rise briefly toward the smoke vent before fading into the haze. The smell of roasting meat has deepened now, rich, fatty, and layered with the faint bitterness of the herbs that were sprinkled over it earlier. It mingles with the damp mineral scent of the cave, creating a warmth that's as much emotional as it is physical. You take a seat near the rack of drying strips, checking each piece for even thickness. If they're too thick, they'll take too long to cure. Too thin, and they'll dry out to the point of snapping. You trim one or two, your knife slicing cleanly with the quiet rasp of steel, or rather, flint, against flesh. Nearby, an elder works on the sinew, stretching and twisting it into fine, strong threads. The motion is rhythmic, almost hypnotic. These threads will be used to repair clothing, bind spear points, and tie together the framework of shelters when you travel. You've seen sinew cords last through storms that would tear apart weaker bindings. A young boy shuffles over with a small bundle of willow bark, setting it down next to the herb grinder. The bark will be boiled later for its medicinal properties, useful for easing pain or treating fevers. Historians still argue whether people in your time understood the chemical reasons behind such remedies. But it doesn't really matter. The knowledge is in the doing, passed down through countless hands and mouths. You don't need to explain why something works to know that it does. The first round of ribs is pulled from the fire, the meat browned and sizzling. The fat drips into the flames, sending up a hiss and a brief flare of light. A portion is set aside for those who stayed behind in the cave while the hunters were out. Keeping the fire alive is as essential as bringing back the meat itself. You chew slowly on a small piece, savoring the way the juices cut through the dryness in your mouth. Hunger here isn't like the fleeting pangs people complain about in more comfortable times. It's a deep, low ache that makes every bite feel like the best thing you've ever tasted. You take your time, partly because it feels good to eat, partly because, your share is finite. Across the fire, Torvik is working the larger bones, splitting them with a heavy hammerstone to expose the marrow. Each crack echoes off the stone walls with a satisfying solidity. The marrow is scraped out with flat pieces of bone and added to a shallow dish where it will be mixed with berries and rendered fat. A dense, long-lasting food you've carried on many journeys. Mira is already boiling a portion of the organ meat in a wide, shallow stone pot, the liquid turning rich and cloudy. The steam curls upward, bringing with it the earthy scent of herbs she added without even looking. You've watched her cook often enough to know she works more by instinct than by measurement, and the results are always worth it. The cave feels warmer now, the combined heat of the fire and the bodies filling the space. The smoke is thicker too, catching the light in slow-moving ribbons. You can hear the faint drip of water at the far end, but it's almost lost beneath the soft clink of tools, the murmur of conversation, and the occasional burst of laughter. One of the children tugs at your sleeve, holding out a small, crudely shaped stone blade. You recognize it as one of your earlier works, something you abandoned when the edge broke unevenly. They've been using it to scrape bark from branches. You take it from them, running your finger along the edge before handing it back. Good enough for bark, you tell them quietly. They grin and return to their task. Moments like that remind you how skills are passed on here, not in formal lessons, but in a constant exchange of tools, advice, and small demonstrations. Every person in the cave carries some piece of someone else's knowledge, whether they realize it or not. Torvik glances toward the entrance, his expression tightening for just a moment. You follow his gaze but see nothing, just the dim outline of the slope outside, washed in pale daylight. Still, you know that look. Even with the fire burning strong and the smell of food thick in the air, the outside world is never far away. A cave is shelter, not a fortress. You turn back to your work, trimming another strip for the drying rack, but your ears stay tuned to the sounds outside. It's habit now, as ingrained as breathing. You can't turn it off, and you wouldn't want to. The steady hum of work begins to take on a rhythm, like the heartbeat of the cave itself. Crack of bone, scrape of flint, murmur of voices. Even the fire seems to settle into a calmer burn, the flames licking steadily at the logs as though aware they have an important role to play in preserving the day's success. You're seated on a low, flat stone now, a strip of hide spread across your knees. With a narrow-bladed flint tool, you work on shaving it down, removing the last bits of fat and membrane clinging to the underside. The sound is soft, almost whispery, flint sliding over flesh. It's satisfying work, knowing that this same hide will soon be part of someone's cloak, bedding, or pack strap. A small group gathers near the entrance where the light is better, repairing spear shafts. One man uses a straight, smooth bone to test for bends, rolling each shaft over it and noting where it wobbles. Another heats the crooked ones over a small side fire, bending them slowly until they're true again. The smell of scorched wood drifts faintly through the air. Nira moves past you with a woven basket lined with clean leaves. Inside are the first cooled portions of roasted meat, ready to be stored in the deeper, colder section of the cave. She pauses to glance over your work on the hide, nods once in approval, and continues on. It's not much of a compliment, but here, a nod is worth more than a string of words. The children have settled into a quieter activity, stringing beads made from tiny shells and bits of bone. They sit in a loose circle, occasionally giggling when someone drops a bead and it bounces into the dark. The beads themselves will be sewn into clothing, used as trade items, or tied to tools for decoration. Even in a life where survival is the main goal, there's space for beauty. Near the fire, Torvik is tending a pot of thick stew, meat scraps, root vegetables, and wild greens from a previous foraging trip. He stirs with a long wooden paddle, the scent rich and layered. You know that later tonight, after the day's work is done, everyone will sit around the fire with bowls of this stew, dipping in with pieces of flatbread baked on hot stones. From somewhere deeper in the cave, you hear the faint thud of a hammerstone meeting bone. One of the elders is shaping tools from the deer's leg bones, all points for piercing hide, smoothers for finishing leather, and needle-like slivers for stitching. It's a quiet, patient craft, one that can't be rushed without risking breakage. The sound of dripping water returns to your attention for a moment. It's softer now, more spaced out, meaning the temperature outside is dropping again. That's good for preserving the meat, but means anyone venturing out tonight will face biting cold. Historians still argue whether groups in your era stored large reserves of food for long periods or lived mainly from one successful hunt to the next. From inside this cave, it feels like both. Every kill buys you time, but that time is always shorter than you'd like. The preserved strips, the smoked marrow paste, the stored fat, they're all safety nets, not luxuries. The hide you've been working on is clean now, smooth to the touch. You roll it up loosely and set it aside, then flex your fingers to work out the stiffness. Your nails are edged with dirt, your knuckles dry from the cold. There's no such thing as clean in the way modern people imagine it, only clean enough not to sicken you. A young hunter approaches, holding out a small pouch made from a rabbit hide. Inside are the deer's teeth, freshly removed and rinsed. They'll be drilled later and strung into necklaces or sewn into garments as charms. You take the pouch, feeling the cool weight of it in your hand. Each tooth is a reminder of the animal's life and of your own ability to take it. Someone laughs near the fire. A deep, genuine laugh that bounces off the walls and softens the cave's atmosphere. It's not often you hear laughter this full during work, but today is a good day. There's food, warmth, and no immediate threats. In this world, that's as close to perfect as it gets. The stew is nearly ready when Torvik calls over one of the younger hunters to taste it. They dip a carved wooden spoon into the thick broth, blow on it, and sip cautiously. Their eyes widen just slightly, a good sign. Torvik gives a grunt that means, "It'll do," and drops in a final handful of dried greens to soften before serving. You stand and stretch, shaking out the stiffness in your legs. Hours of crouching and leaning over work have left your lower back tight, but the smell from the fire is enough to distract you. Hunger hums quietly in your stomach, not the sharp bite of emptiness you felt before the hunt, but a warm anticipation that makes your mouth water. Mira returns from the cold storage alcove, rubbing her hands briskly to bring the warmth back. The leaves lining her basket are gone, replaced with only a faint smell of meat. She sits beside you for a moment, wordlessly passing you a strip of smoked deer from a past hunt. You chew slowly, the flavor smoky and rich, the texture just tough enough to make you work for each bite. Around the fire, bowls are being readied, shallow dishes of carved wood or polished bone. Flat stones, warmed by the fire, hold small rounds of bread, their surfaces browned and faintly blistered. Someone sprinkles crushed herbs over them, the sharp scent cutting through the heavier aroma of the stew. Before serving, the elders take a moment to set aside a small portion of the deer's meat and fat, placing it on a clean leaf near the fire. It's an old practice, done without ceremony, but always done. A share for the land, for whatever forces watch over the hunt. Historians still debate whether this was religious ritual or simple superstition. But, it's less about belief and more about habit. Habits, after all, are what keep you alive. The first ladleful of stew fills your bowl, steam curling upward to fog your face. You tear off a piece of bread and dip it in, the broth soaking through instantly. The taste is deep and savory, the meat tender enough to fall apart at the touch of your teeth. Each bite sends warmth flooding down your throat, spreading through your chest and belly. The conversation around the fire grows a little louder now, loosened by food and heat. Torvik tells a short story about a hunt from years ago, one where he swears a deer doubled back to stalk him. Mira snorts and says she's sure he dreamed it. Laughter ripples around the circle, even from those who've heard the tale before. Once the edge of hunger is gone, the pace slows. Some lean back against the walls, cradling their bowls. Others begin small tasks again, repairing a strap, twisting cord, sharpening a blade. Here, rest and work often happen side by side. You might be digesting, but your hands can still make something useful. You finish the last of your stew, the broth coating your tongue in a way that makes you want to lick the bowl clean. Instead, you set it aside and rub your palms together over the fire, feeling the skin tighten in the dry heat. At the edge of the firelight, one of the elders begins carving a new shape into a length of bone. Small, precise cuts that will eventually form a tool handle. A child sits nearby, mimicking the movements with a stick. You watch them both for a moment, recognizing in the small hands the same awkwardness you once had. That awkwardness will fade, replaced by muscle memory so deep it will feel like instinct. The smell of meat still lingers thick in the air, mixing with the ever-present smoke and the faint tang of damp stone. Outside, the last of the daylight fades, the pale blue of evening visible through the cave entrance. The fire's light grows stronger in contrast, its flicker painting the walls in gold and shadow. As the meal winds down, you feel the familiar, quiet satisfaction that comes at the end of a successful hunt and a well-fed evening. Tomorrow will bring its own work. Mending, gathering, maybe another hunt. But tonight, there's enough food, enough warmth, and enough people here to share it. You pull your hide around your shoulders and settle a little closer to the fire, letting its heat sink in. Outside, the cold is deepening, but in here, the air is alive with soft voices, the crackle of flames, and the steady heartbeat of survival. Morning's memory still clings to your muscles, but now the forest stretches before you in all its ancient, unbroken quiet. The hunt is done, the deer safely stored, and today the work shifts. Your feet carry you not toward prey, but deeper into the towering woods for a different kind of harvest. Nuts, berries, mushrooms, and honey. Each requires its own skill, and none of them are simply a matter of picking and eating. The air outside the cave is crisp, carrying a faint sweetness from last night's frost melting in the undergrowth. You fall into step beside Mira, who's carrying a woven basket on her hip. Its frame is bent from willow branches, lined with leaves to keep smaller finds from slipping through. You carry your own, though yours is lighter, meant for mushrooms and berries, which bruise easily if packed too tightly. Torvik leads the way, not with the high-strung alertness of a hunt, but with a slower, surveying gaze. He's not looking for movement this time. He's reading the land for clues about where food might be most plentiful today. A fallen tree might hide nuts beneath its rotting bark. A cluster of old stumps might shelter honeybees. The path you take dips into a hollow where the air is cooler and damper. Ferns cluster thick here, their fronds slick from condensation. Your eyes scan automatically for the deep green of edible shoots among them, something to cut and carry back for stew. A few steps ahead, Mira crouches suddenly, brushing aside leaves to reveal a cluster of mushrooms. Their caps are broad and dappled, their gills pale. She breaks one cleanly, inspecting the base for signs of rot or insects before dropping it into her basket. Identifying mushrooms is as much about what not to take as what you do. The wrong choice can turn a good meal into a night of pain. or worse. Historians still argue whether people of your time learned safe foraging purely from observation or if certain tastes and smells were instinctively recognized as dangerous. Either way, you've learned enough through trial and error to trust your eyes and your nose. Further along, you spot the first nut trees. Their branches are bare now, but the ground beneath is littered with husks and shells, some still whole. You kneel and begin to gather, testing each by weight and sound. Light, hollow ones are empty or spoiled, while heavier ones hold the good meat inside. Your fingers grow stiff from the cold, but you keep working. The clink of shells against each other, a small but satisfying sound. Torvik's voice drifts from a few paces away. Watch for squirrel caches. You glance over to see him kicking gently at a mound of leaves and uncovering a neat little stash of nuts tucked into a hollow. The squirrels won't thank you, but in this life, there's no such thing as someone else's property when it comes to survival. The sun climbs slowly, its light filtering through the tall trunks in narrow shafts. You move in and out of these beams, sometimes blinking at the sudden brightness, sometimes stepping into the cool, shadowed green. Each patch of forest holds a different possibility. Here, a thicket that might hide berries. There, a patch of mossy ground that sometimes shelters mushrooms after a wet night. Mira calls softly, beckoning you over. She's found a fallen log split down the middle, its hollow buzzing faintly. Honeybees! You both know to be cautious. She produces a bundle of smoldering grass from her pouch, waving it gently to send curls of smoke toward the hollow. The bees' buzzing grows deeper, slower, and soon they drift away enough for you to reach in with a flat piece of bark. The comb comes out heavy and golden, dripping thick trails of honey onto your hands. The first taste is almost shockingly sweet, coating your tongue and cutting through the earthy flavors that dominate most days. You lick it away quickly, both to enjoy it and so none goes to waste, before setting the comb carefully into your basket. Honey will be eaten fresh, but it's also medicine, salve, and preservative. The forest around you feels alive in a way the cave never does. Every sound sharp and distinct, from the rustle of a bird in dry leaves to the crack of a branch under Torvik's boot. The air smells of resin and damp bark, and occasionally the faint tang of crushed herbs underfoot. You press on, the basket's growing heavier, your shoulders starting to feel the strain. There's no sense of rush, only the steady forward motion of people who know they'll keep walking until the light fades or the baskets are full. And as you scan the ground for more signs of life, you realize this. Gathering is every bit as much a hunt as stalking deer. The prey is smaller, slower, but it still hides, and it still demands skill to find. The path curves into a denser stretch of forest, where the trees grow so close together their trunks form a wall of gray and brown. Here the light filters down in fractured pieces, dappling the ground with shifting patches of gold and shadow. It's cooler in this part, and the air carries the faint, sweet smell of decay. Fallen leaves breaking down into soil that will feed the next season's growth. Torvik pauses to run his hand over the bark of a tall oak. This one's good for late nuts, he says, tapping the trunk. You and Nira both kneel at its base, brushing aside the thick layer of leaves. Sure enough, a scattering of nuts lies beneath, some still snug inside their protective shells. You fill a small pouch, listening to the soft clink as they fall together. These will keep well if dried properly back at the cave, providing a rare, crunchy texture in meals dominated by stews and roasted meat. Not far from the oak, You spot a low bush with a few lingering berries. Small, dark, and glossy. They're winter survivors, often missed by animals because they hide deep under the outer branches. You cup your hands around them as you pick, careful not to crush their fragile skins. The cold has concentrated their sweetness, and you pop one into your mouth, letting it burst on your tongue. A little further along, the ground dips into a small clearing, and there, in a patch of rich soil, you find a flush of mushrooms. Their caps are round and unblemished, the gills underneath tight and pale. You kneel to cut them at the base, sliding them into your basket between layers of leaves to prevent bruising. Nira calls your attention to a nearby log, overturned and crawling with small insects. "Good for bait," she says, scooping them into a bark container. It's a reminder that gathering isn't just about plants. Everything has a use. And sometimes the smallest finds can be the key to catching tomorrow's meal. The sun edges higher, but the canopy keeps the light soft and indirect. Somewhere nearby, a woodpecker taps in its steady, hollow rhythm, a sound that carries far in the still air. You can smell pine resin where a tree's bark has split, the sticky amber catching the light in thick, gleaming drops. You scrape a bit off with the tip of your knife, useful for waterproofing bindings or sealing small holes in water containers. Torvik gestures toward a large, gnarled tree at the edge of the clearing. "Bee tree," he says, his voice low but certain. You approach carefully, scanning for movement. At first, the bark looks solid, but as you get closer, you see the faint shimmer of wings near a small opening. The bees are calmer in the cool air, but you still take your time. Nira pulls out her smoking bundle again, waving it gently until the bees slow their movements. You reach in together, lifting out another slab of comb, heavier than the one from earlier. The smell is thick and floral, the honey a deeper gold here. You tuck it carefully into the basket, already imagining how it will taste spread over warm bread or stirred into a cup of boiled herb water. The forest seems to approve of your quiet harvest. Birds continue their soft calls overhead, and somewhere in the distance a small animal scurries through the undergrowth without alarming anything nearby. There's a kind of peace here that the cave can't match, a reminder that the world is still moving, still growing, even in the lean season. Historians still argue whether prehistoric people saw gathering as women's work or simply as another essential skill for everyone. Walking here, with Torvik ahead, Nira beside you, and your own hands full, the idea of separating the work seems absurd. Survival demands versatility. You gather when there's food to gather. You hunt when there's game to hunt. The forest doesn't care about roles. It only cares whether you can take what it offers without wasting it. By the time you circle back toward a familiar trail, the baskets are noticeably heavier. Nuts clink softly inside their pouches, mushrooms rest in cushioned layers, and the combs of honey glisten in the filtered light. Your arms ache from carrying the weight, but it's the satisfying ache that comes from knowing the group will eat better because of it. The sun is just starting its slow slide toward the horizon, and, you'll have to keep moving if you want to be back before the cold deepens again. Still, you pause for one last scan of the forest floor, just in case. Out here, even a single overlooked patch of berries can mean the difference between enough and almost enough. The trail home isn't a straight line, not when you're still foraging as you go. Torvik deliberately steers the group toward an area where chest-high shrubs grow in dense, tangled clusters. Their thorny branches make them tricky to navigate, but you've learned that such spots often hide late-season berries or small burrows. You part the branches carefully, eyes scanning for any flash of color. There, tucked low against the base, almost hidden under a mat of dry leaves, you spot a handful of deep red berries. They're not as plump as those from warmer months, but they're still edible and tart enough to brighten a meal. You pluck them gently, dropping them into a small side pouch lined with soft moss to keep them from being crushed. A rustle in the underbrush draws your attention. For a moment, you think it's just the wind, but then a shape darts across the narrow gap between shrubs. A rabbit, its winter coat pale against the brown leaves. You freeze, not because you're going to chase it, but because your eyes follow where it came from. Sure enough, there's a shallow burrow at the base of a fallen log. You make a mental note of its location. With snares, it could feed you another day. The group presses on, skirting a fallen pine whose trunk is blanketed in thick moss. Nira stops to run her hand over it, feeling for softness that might mean rot. She finds a spot and digs gently with her fingers until she pulls out a clump of pale, stringy fungus. It's not for eating, but it's perfect for fire starting. Dry and fibrous, it catches sparks easily even in damp weather. She tucks it into her basket alongside the food. A few hundred steps later, the smell of something sweet stops you mid-stride. It's faint but distinct, overripe fruit somewhere close. You follow your nose to a low, twisted tree bearing a few stubborn apples, their skins mottled but still intact. You climb onto a nearby rock, reach up, and twist one free. The skin is wrinkled and the flesh soft, but the taste is surprisingly good, sweet with just enough tang to cut through the heaviness of dried meat and roots. You share the find, passing the fruit around so everyone can take a bite. The juice is sticky on your hands, and you lick it away quickly before the cold air can chap your skin further. The cores are tossed aside, left for whatever animals might pass this way after you. The sound of a woodpecker echoes again, closer now. Its tapping leads you to a hollow tree with a scattering of shell fragments at its base, evidence that squirrels or birds have been feeding here. Torvik taps the trunk lightly with his spear butt, listening to the resonance. Dry inside, he murmurs. He pries away a small section of bark, revealing a handful of cached seeds. They go into his pouch without ceremony. Historians still argue whether caches like these were taken sparingly to allow the animals to survive the winter or emptied entirely whenever found. In your experience, it's not a matter of kindness or cruelty. It's about calculation. If your group is well supplied, you take only what you need. If you're short, you take everything. This time, the cache is small, so it disappears into Torvik's pouch. The forest opens slightly as you near a ridge, the light stronger here where fewer trees block the sky. You take the chance to shift your basket, stretching the ache from your shoulders. Your fingers are stiff from the cold, but you flex them until the blood flows again. A heavy comb of honey, still dripping slightly, rests against the side of your basket, its golden glow catching in the sunlight. From the ridge, you can see the faint line of the river in the distance, a silver thread cutting through the land. The sight pulls at you. Rivers mean fish, reeds, and often game animals coming to drink. But that's tomorrow's task, not today's. Today is about what you can carry home before dark. The descent from the ridge is slow, the ground here layered with loose stones hidden under frost. You place each step carefully, listening to the crunch beneath your feet. Somewhere far off, a crow calls, once, twice, 3 times. It's just sound to most ears, but to you, It means something's moved through the area recently, big enough to draw the birds' attention. By the time you reach the lower ground again, the shadows have lengthened. The forest has shifted from the gold of late afternoon to the cooler blues of approaching evening. Your baskets are nearly full, and the pace quickens without needing to be discussed. The cold will sharpen again soon, and you want to be back in the cave before it does. The forest begins to close in again as you take the last stretch toward home. The path narrowing between stands of tall, dark pines. The wind here moves differently, whistling softly through the upper branches, carrying with it the mingled scents of resin, damp earth, and the faint sweetness of the honey in your basket. Your shoulders ache from the weight, but you keep your pace steady. The shadows stretching long across the ground remind you there's little daylight left. Mira shifts her own basket and glances at you with a small smirk. "Full enough yet?" she asks, her tone light but edged with that competitive streak you've seen before. You glance down at your haul. Nuts in a side pouch, mushrooms cushioned in leaves, a thick comb of honey still glistening despite the cold, and a handful of tart winter berries. "Almost," you say, though you both know there's always room for one more good find. Torvik halts abruptly, raising a hand for silence. You freeze, listening. At first, there's only the rustle of branches in the breeze, but then you catch it, a faint chittering sound from somewhere ahead. You follow him as he veers off the path toward a cluster of low, tangled shrubs. Pushing aside the branches, you see them, clusters of hazelnuts still clinging stubbornly to their husks. They're late-season stragglers, but the cold has kept them good. Without a word, everyone sets baskets down and begins picking. The shells are hard and smooth, and they make a satisfying clink as they drop into your pouch. You work quickly, knowing this is a rare find this late in the year. Torvik cracks one open on the spot, tasting it and nodding in approval before tossing the rest into his pouch. When the last of the nuts are gathered, the group falls back into formation. The forest floor crunches underfoot, the sound louder now in the stillness of evening. Somewhere far to the east, a lone wolf howls, not close enough to cause alarm, but close enough to keep your senses alert. The smell of meat still lingers faintly on your clothing from the hunt, and, the sound isn't just for show. As the trees begin to thin, the first hints of the rocky slope leading up to the cave come into view. The fading sunlight casts the rocks in pale blues and grays, and you can already see the darker shadow where the cave entrance waits. The sight is like a physical weight lifting from your chest. Home is close. The last climb is slow, partly because of the basket's weight and partly because the frost on the rocks makes each step treacherous. Mira goes first, picking her path carefully, her balance sure despite the load she carries. Torvik follows, then you, then the rest of the group. Each step brings you closer to the warm, smoky air, is waiting. At the entrance, the shift in atmosphere is immediate. The scent of wood smoke hits first, followed by the low murmur of voices and the faint glow of firelight spilling across the stone. You duck inside, setting your basket down just beyond the threshold where others can see the haul. People gather quickly, their faces lighting at the sight of the honey, the nuts, the mushrooms, and berries. The children peer into the baskets, pointing and whispering. An elder takes the honeycomb first, holding it carefully as if it were a fragile tool, before carrying it toward the back where it will be divided later. Your arms feel light now that the burden is gone, though your shoulders still throb from the weight. You flex your fingers, feeling the stiffness ease as the cave's warmth begins to sink into your skin. The sounds of sorting and unpacking fill the space. Nuts being poured into woven storage baskets, mushrooms spread on leaves near the fire to dry, berries set aside for immediate use. Historians still argue whether such harvests were celebrated or simply treated as routine. In your group, there's no grand ceremony, but the quiet satisfaction in every face says enough. Tonight's meal will be richer, and tomorrow's survival a little more secure. Torvik claps you once on the shoulder as he passes, a wordless acknowledgement of the day's work. You settle onto a hide near the fire, letting its heat seep deep into your bones. Outside, the forest is already sinking into night, but here, surrounded by voices and the smell of food, you feel the rare, fleeting calm that comes when the day's efforts have paid off. The next morning breaks colder, sharper, the kind of cold that seeps into the stone itself. So even inside the cave, the air has a bite to it. You can see your breath in faint white clouds as you pull your hide tighter and glance toward the entrance. Today isn't for hunting or nut gathering. It's a day for the stream. The stream lies a short walk from the cave, but the journey will take longer than you think. Not because of the distance, but because of the way you move through the land. Slower, scanning the ground for what's hidden among the frost and fallen leaves. You'll be looking for plants, but not just any plants. The ones that keep you alive when meat runs low. The ones that can heal you when sickness or injury comes. Torvik shoulders his spear more as a precaution than necessity. Predators drink too, he mutters, half to himself. Nira has a smaller basket today, but she carries a sharpened digging stick. You've got your pouch, lined with a layer of dried leaves to cushion delicate finds. The forest is still heavy with morning mist when you set out. It clings to your hair and hide, dampening the smell of smoke you've carried from the cave. The ground is soft here, the frost thinner under the blanket of fallen pine needles. As you walk, the air shifts, the smell of damp earth thickening, the sound of water faint but growing. You're the first to spot the mint. It grows in low, sprawling patches along the path, its leaves dark green and edged with frost. When you crush one between your fingers, the scent bursts out, sharp, clean, and almost sweet. It's more than flavor. Mint tea can soothe an upset stomach, calm a cough, or just warm you on a freezing night. You kneel to gather a handful, careful not to uproot the whole patch. The forest doesn't forgive greed. A few steps ahead, Nira stops beside a tall, bare-limbed tree. "Willow," she says, tapping the bark. You know what that means. Its inner bark is medicine for pain and fever. Historians still argue whether people in your time understood the link between willow bark and its pain-relieving qualities, but you've seen it work too many times to doubt it. You watch as Nira strips a narrow band of bark, rolling it into a tight coil before tucking it into her basket. The sound of the stream grows clearer now, a steady, bubbling murmur. You step over a patch of frozen cattail stalks, their long roots hidden in the mud. Cattail roots are starchy and filling, good roasted or boiled, but they're tricky to dig without soaking yourself in freezing water. You mark the spot with a forked stick for later, in case you have the energy to come back. When you finally break through the trees, the stream is exactly as you remember it. Narrow but deep in places, winding through banks of smooth stone and frost-crusted reeds. The water is clear enough to see the small darting shapes of fish beneath the surface. Mist rises from it in thin veils, catching the pale light and making the whole place look almost dreamlike. The banks are rich here, You spot beech nuts scattered in the leaf litter, some still encased in their spiky shells. They're small, but their flavor is rich and oily, a good addition to stews. You crouch to collect them, the cold seeping into your knees through the hide leggings. On the far side of the stream, a patch of low green catches your eye. It's watercress, its leaves trembling in the current. You step carefully onto a flat rock and lean out to pluck a few stems, the cold water numbing your fingers instantly. You bite into one, peppery and fresh, a sharp contrast to the smoky, earthy flavors that dominate your meals. Torvik calls from downstream. He's found more willow and a patch of cattails that's easier to reach. The group spreads out, moving along the bank in a loose, methodical pattern. It's not just about finding food. It's about knowing where these things grow so you can return when you need them. You kneel again, this time to scrape away a thin layer of frost and uncover a clump of wild onions. The smell is strong, enough to make your mouth water. They'll go into tonight's cooking, adding a bite to whatever meat is pulled from storage. You tuck them carefully into your pouch, wrapping them in leaves to keep them clean. The stream gurgles on, steady and indifferent, as if it has no stake in whether you succeed or fail. But you know better. In a place like this, water is life, and life gathers around water. The plants you find here, the animals that come to drink, even the cold clarity of the water itself. This is the spine of survival. You shift upstream, the ground crunching faintly beneath your feet where frost clings to grass. The air grows sharper here, carrying the faint metallic tang of minerals from the water. Your breath hangs in the air, and every inhale feels almost too clean, as if the cold is scrubbing your lungs. Mira crouches ahead of you, her digging stick working in the dark soil near the edge of the bank. She pries up a cattail root, long and pale beneath its muddy skin. When she slices a section open with her knife, the inside is white and starchy, good eating once roasted. She hands it to you to clean, and you swipe it with a handful of dry grass, revealing the smooth flesh beneath. These roots will keep your group's bellies full on lean days. A few steps farther, you find something rarer, yarrow, its feathery leaves still green despite the frost. You pinch off a sprig, breathing in its sharp, almost medicinal scent. Mixed into a poultice, it can stop bleeding. Boiled, it helps with fever. Historians still debate whether early people learned these uses through centuries of trial and error or if they watched animals self-medicate and followed their lead. Either way, you've seen yarrow work where nothing else could. Torvik kneels by a shallow bend in the stream, his hands cupped under the water. He drinks deeply, then spits the first mouthful back, letting the sediment clear before drinking again. You follow suit, dipping your hands into the icy current. The cold burns at first, then numbs, until the water slides down your throat like a shard of winter itself. Along the edge of the bank, you notice a cluster of horsetail plants. Their stiff, jointed stalks rising like miniature bamboo. You snap a few, knowing their silica-rich stems can be chewed to clean teeth or boiled for a tea that's said to strengthen bones. Mira raises an eyebrow at your find but doesn't comment. She's too busy prying up more cattail roots, her breath puffing in steady bursts. Torvik gestures for you to join him by a flat, sun-warmed rock that juts into the stream. On its surface are a handful of freshly cracked beech nuts, the inner kernels pale and oily. He hands you one, and you bite into it. The taste is rich, almost buttery. In a world of lean meats and fibrous roots, the oiliness feels like luxury. You all work in silence for a while, the sound of water mingling with the occasional splash of a boot or the clink of stone against stone. The sun is climbing, but its light here is diffuse, softened by the thin mist that still hangs over the water. You notice tiny tracks along the muddy edge, probably from a fox that came to drink earlier. The stream's current swirls in little eddies around submerged stones, and you spot a flash of movement beneath the surface. Fish. Small, but enough to make the idea tempting. You make a mental note to return with a spear or woven trap. For now, your focus stays on the plants. A patch of mint catches your eye again, this time growing right at the water's edge, its roots dipping into the stream. The leaves are smaller here, but the scent is even stronger. You take a few, tucking them into your pouch. Mixed with honey, mint tea is a cure for the kind of deep, chest-heavy coughs that winter brings. As you work, you think about the stream not just as a source of resources, but as a map. Every bend, every shaded patch, every stand of reeds tells you something about the seasons. The plants here will die back soon, but their roots will remain, waiting for spring. You'll return then, just as your people have for as long as anyone can remember. The baskets are filling now. Mint, willow bark, cattail roots, beech nuts, wild onions, yarrow, horsetail. The weight isn't much compared to a hunt, but it feels different. This weight is quiet, subtle. It promises health and steady meals rather than the sharp, immediate satisfaction of fresh meat. Torvik straightens, scanning the far bank. Enough for today, he says finally. We'll save the rest for next time. His tone isn't just about pacing the work. It's about not stripping the land bare. Take too much, and next season there will be nothing left. The group begins to move back along the bank, keeping an eye out for anything you might have missed. Even on the way out, your eyes stay sharp. The forest and stream always hide something new, and the day isn't over yet. The walk back along the stream is unhurried, but no one moves lazily. Every few paces, someone pauses to check the ground or scan the water's edge. The return route is as much a gathering opportunity as the way in. You've learned that sometimes the best finds appear when you're not actively looking. Your eyes softer, your mind more open to small details. Mira spots the first of these, a knot of bright green shoots pushing through the frost near a patch of reeds. At first glance, they look fragile, but you recognize them immediately. Young nettles. They'll sting your skin if you handle them carelessly, but cooked, they're tender and rich in nutrients. She pulls on a pair of rough hide mitts and cuts the tops, dropping them into her basket. These will likely go into a soup tonight, their sharp taste mellowed by boiling. Further on, you kneel beside a stand of reeds and pull at one, testing the firmness of its roots. Cattails again, but this time the soil is looser, the roots coming free more easily. You brush away the clinging mud with dry grass before wrapping them in leaves for the journey home. The rhythm of the work, cut, clean, wrap, becomes almost meditative. The air is warmer here where the sun reaches the bank, and you notice more animal tracks in the softened mud. A pair of larger prints makes you pause. Wolf, most likely, not fresh, but fresh enough to remind you that you're not the only one watching this stretch of water. You glance at Torvik, and he's already seen them, his jaw tightening briefly before he turns his focus back to the path. A flash of movement catches your eye near a shallow bend in the stream. You crouch low and watch as a water bird, small and dark-feathered, dips its head into the current, pulling up something wriggling before swallowing it whole. It glances your way but doesn't startle. Either it hasn't decided you're a threat, or the food is too good to abandon. The group pauses at a flat stretch of bank to take a drink and rest their arms. You sit on a smooth stone, letting your fingers trail in the water. It's colder now than it was earlier, and you wonder if snowmelt from higher ground is feeding into the stream. The cold can work in your favor, slowing the growth of algae and keeping the water clearer. But it also warns of harsher weather on the way. Torvik takes this moment to unwrap a strip of dried meat from his pouch, breaking it into smaller pieces to share. The salty, smoky flavor is grounding, a reminder of the deer hunt only a day before. Eating while you work keeps the edge off your hunger without slowing the pace. As you resume walking, you notice a cluster of small plants growing between two stones, their leaves glossy and dark. Wintergreen. You pluck a few, rolling one between your fingers before popping it into your mouth. The flavor is cool, almost minty, and the leaves can be chewed to freshen breath or steeped for a mild tea. You hand a few to Nira, who tucks them into her pouch without comment. Historians still argue whether ancient foragers kept mental maps of where plants grew or if they rediscovered them season after season. From your own experience, it's both. You remember key spots, but you also keep your eyes open for surprises. Nature shifts, and a reliable patch one year might vanish the next. You cross a narrow section of the stream using a fallen log as a bridge, the wood slick under your feet. On the far side, the ground rises slightly, and you find a tangle of low-growing shrubs. Pushing the branches aside reveals a scattering of small, wrinkled berries, past their prime but still edible. They'll be tart, perhaps too tart for some, but mixed into a stew, they'll add a welcome brightness. The baskets are nearly full now. Mint, willow bark, cattail roots, beech nuts, yarrow, horsetail, nettles, wintergreen, and a handful of berries, all gathered in a few hours' work. The combined weight tugs at your arms, but it's a good heaviness, the kind you feel proud to carry. The stream begins to curve away from your route, its voice growing softer behind you. Soon the sound of running water will fade entirely, replaced by the quieter forest noises. But the memory of it lingers. The chill on your fingers, the smell of wet stone, the way the plants seem to thrive along its edges. You'll be back. You always come back. The stream's sound fades completely as you follow the narrow trail back toward the cave. The forest closes in again. Pines, bare-limbed birches, and the occasional oak stretching high above, their branches netting the pale afternoon light into a dim weave. The air is still, holding that heavy quiet you've learned to read as both safe and fragile. Nira shifts her basket from one hip to the other, the cattail roots and willow bark inside shifting with a soft thud. "We'll need to dry the mint right away," she says, half to herself. You nod. Fresh. It has the strongest scent, but even dried it holds enough bite to work in teas and poultices. Torvik keeps to the front, his eyes scanning the trail. You notice he's not looking for plants anymore. He's looking for movement. You catch it too, now that you've turned homeward. A faint crack in the underbrush, a shift in shadow that doesn't match the sway of the trees. It might be nothing, but it's the kind of nothing that has teeth if ignored. The slope ahead grows steeper, forcing you to lean into the climb. Your arms ache from the steady pull of the baskets, the straps digging faint lines into your shoulders. Every step is measured, not just to conserve energy, but to avoid slipping on patches where frost still clings to the soil. The cold bites harder here in the shaded incline, and you can feel it chasing up your legs through the thin soles of your foot straps. Halfway up, you pass under a bent pine whose lowest branch scrapes your shoulder. In its crook, you see a small stash of pine cones, half open, their seeds mostly gone. Probably the work of squirrels. You take the empty cones anyway. When dried near the fire, they make good kindling. The last stretch of trail opens briefly onto a view of the valley. You pause to catch your breath and see the silver ribbon of the stream far below, winding lazily through the forest. From here, it looks almost harmless, its cold depths and hidden roots invisible at this distance. You think about the plants in your basket, how most of them wouldn't survive far from that water, and the quiet dependence your group has on that place. As you approach the cave, the smell of wood smoke reaches you first, warm and familiar. The light spilling from the entrance is a deep orange now, contrasting with the pale blue of the late-day sky. You step inside, the change immediate. The cold drops away, replaced by the dense, smoky warmth of stone and fire. Inside, voices rise to greet you, not in celebration, but in that low, satisfied tone that means the day's work is done well. Children hurry over to peer into the baskets, their eyes widening at the honey-colored cattail roots and the fresh green mint. An elder takes the willow bark and yarrow first, setting them aside in the small nook reserved for medicine. The rest is sorted quickly. Roots near the fire to dry, leaves spread on flat stones, nuts stored in woven baskets lined with hide. Historians still argue whether these kinds of foraging trips were planned with strict lists or guided entirely by opportunity. Judging from today, you'd say it's both. You left with ideas in mind, mint, willow bark, cattail, but came back with nettles, wintergreen, and berries as well. The forest gives what it gives. Your job is to notice. Torvik sets his own basket down with a quiet grunt of relief, then hands you a strip of dried meat from his pouch. It's his way of saying, "Good work today." You chew it slowly, the salt and smoke grounding you after hours of cold air and moving water. The cave's fire pops, sending a wave of warmth across your hands. The smell of something roasting mixes with the fresher scents from your basket. Outside, night is beginning to gather in the trees, but in here, the work of the day is done, and the stream's gifts are safely stored. The warmth of the cave settles into your bones as you help set down the last of the baskets from the Streamside gathering. The fire burns low but steady, casting a copper glow over the busy scene. Tonight will be for processing the day's haul. Every root, leaf, and nut has its own way of being preserved, and the sooner it's done, the better the chance it will last. Torvik sits cross-legged near the back, the front half of the deer stretched out on a flat rock in front of him. With deliberate strokes, he pares away thin strips of meat, placing them on a rack above a slow bed of embers where the smoke will curl gently around them. You can smell it already, that earthy, sweet scent of preservation. It's not for tonight's meal. These strips will be the safety net for leaner days. You kneel beside Mira, who has spread the cattail roots on hide. She works with a sharpened flake of flint, slicing away the outer layer to reveal the smooth, pale flesh beneath. The trimmed pieces are laid in neat rows on another hide to dry. The smaller, Softer ones are set aside for immediate cooking. You take one and nibble the end. Crisp, faintly sweet, almost like the memory of summer hidden in the plant's core. On the other side of the fire, an elder works the willow bark into long, curling strips, her gnarled fingers surprisingly quick. Some will be tied into small bundles for storage, others ground into powder to be mixed into tea. The scent of it drifts across the cave, mild, slightly woody, with a hint of something sharp underneath. Children have gathered around a shallow stone basin where a mix of mint, wintergreen, and yarrow is being gently crushed with a rounded pestle. They giggle at the strong smell, wrinkling their noses, but they follow the elder's instructions. Grind evenly, keep the mixture in the center, don't spill. It's less about the medicine and more about teaching the rhythm of the work. The nuts from the forest are being shelled near the entrance, where the light is better and the mess can be swept outside. Two hunters work side by side, cracking shells with smooth river stones. The tap-tap sounds steady as a heartbeat. The meat inside is dropped into a woven container lined with dried leaves to keep it clean. You know, these nuts will be roasted for tonight's meal and the rest stored whole for later. From the far corner comes the sharp snap of bone splitting. Someone is cracking open the deer's leg bones for marrow. The thick, creamy fat is scraped out and dropped into a shallow stone bowl, where it's mashed with dried berries and a little smoke-cured meat. This will be packed into hide pouches for travel, a food dense enough to keep you moving for hours without stopping to cook. Historians still debate whether every part of an animal was truly used or if some scraps were discarded. In your group, nothing is wasted, not because of tradition, but because you can't afford to waste it. Even the smallest pieces of hide will find a use. Patching torn clothing, wrapping bundles, or lining the inside of storage baskets. You take your turn at the drying rack, carefully flipping the meat strips so they dry evenly. The heat from the embers rises into your face, making your cheeks flush even as the rest of your body stays cool in the cave's air. The surface of the meat is beginning to darken and firm, the first sign that it's losing enough moisture to last. Near you, Nira has finished slicing the last of the cattail roots. She gathers the peelings into a basket. These, too, can be used as kindling once dry. Nothing here is truly trash. It's just material waiting for a purpose. The hum of work fills the cave. Low voices, the occasional burst of laughter, the background rhythm of tools meeting food, stone, or hide. Outside, the sky is darkening, the light at the entrance shifting from pale gold to deep blue. You can feel the night approaching, but here in the cave, the glow of the fire is enough to make the stone walls feel like a living thing, breathing with the warmth and movement of the people inside. The fire's glow deepens, throwing shadows that sway gently along the cave walls. You move closer to the hearth, your hands extended toward the warmth as you take your next task, cleaning and preparing the herbs from the stream. The mint is first. You pick through the leaves, removing any that are too bruised. Then lay the good ones on a flat slab of sandstone. With a smoothed river rock, you press them lightly, releasing that bright, sharp scent into the air. It mingles with the heavier aromas of roasting meat and drying cattail roots, creating a layered fragrance that feels almost like a map of the day's work. Beside you, an elder ties the yarrow into tight bundles with strips of thin hide. She works without speaking, but her eyes dart over each plant, checking for damage or rot. She hands you one of the bundles to place near the back wall. where it's cooler and the air moves just enough to keep mold from setting in. The storage nook is a small miracle in itself, built from overlapping slabs of stone to keep out rodents and insulated with layers of woven reeds. Across the fire, Torvik is working with a bone awl, repairing a tear in one of the hide pouches used for holding dried berries and nuts. He doesn't look up when he speaks. "We'll need 2 more of these before the snow comes," he says flatly. "It's not a complaint, just a fact." You nod, already thinking about which scraps of hide could be cut and softened for the job. Mira has shifted to the nut pile, her fingers moving quickly as she separates halves from fragments. She pauses occasionally to pop a piece into her mouth, and you can almost hear the satisfying crunch from where you sit. You remember hearing once that some groups buried their nuts in shallow pits, leaving them for months before retrieving them for winter feasts. Historians still argue whether this was intentional storage or just a lucky accident of forgetting. But in your world, forgetting food in the ground feels like a luxury no one could afford. The bone-cracking work continues near the entrance. The rich smell of marrow mixes with the faint tang of blood, though most of the scent is swallowed quickly by the smoke. The marrow paste is coming together, berries lending it a deep red tint, dried meat adding texture. It's one of those foods that doesn't look like much but carries the weight of survival. A pouch of it could see you through a day's travel without a single fire lit. You're handed a strip of dried meat from the rack to test. The outer layer is firm now, almost leathery. You tear off a piece with your teeth and chew slowly, letting the smoky saltiness bloom on your tongue. The chew is long, but that's part of the point. It forces you to take your time, stretching each bite into something that feels more filling than it is. The children, having finished their herb-crushing task, drift toward the nut pile. They're shooed away by the shell crackers, but find their place helping an elder thread small pieces of meat onto thin, sharpened sticks for drying. Their small fingers are better at the delicate threading work, and they chatter quietly as they go. The light inside the cave has shifted again. Firelight stronger now against the deepening blue-black of the outside world. You can hear the forest in the distance, the faint hoot of an owl, the rustle of something small moving through the underbrush, the distant snap of a branch that might be wind or might be something else entirely. Here inside, though, it's just warmth and work and the steady exchange of tools and food from one set of hands to another. You take the last bundle of mint to the drying shelf near the fire, arranging it so the leaves don't overlap too much. In a few days, they'll be brittle enough to store, their scent locked in until the day you need them again. You run your fingers over the surface of the drying cattail roots. They're still cool, the moisture slow to leave, but the fire will coax it out eventually. The night is well underway now, but no one talks about stopping. In a place like this, the work isn't something you can finish. It's just a cycle you step into, do your part, and step back out of when your hands are too tired to continue. You move toward the entrance for a moment, drawn by the crisp night air and the faint moonlight spilling through the trees outside. From here, the cave's warmth brushes against your back while the cold nips at your face. You stand there for a few breaths, letting the contrast sharpen your senses before returning to the work inside. The honeycomb, wrapped carefully in layers of leaves, is brought forward now. An elder kneels beside the fire and peels back the layers slowly, as if unwrapping a precious gift. The comb glistens in the firelight, golden and sticky, each cell still sealed with wax. A small knife is used to cut it into thick slabs. Some is placed on a flat rock near the heat to soften for immediate eating, while the rest will be stored in tightly sealed containers made from hollowed-out sections of bone, plugged with wax to keep it fresh. The sweet smell fills the air, momentarily overpowering the smoke and herbs. Nira takes a small taste of the honey with the tip of her finger, and the look on her face says everything. You take your own taste. Sweetness so pure it almost aches. So rare in this world of salt, smoke, and bitterness. This will be used sparingly, mostly as medicine for coughs and sore throats. But tonight, a little will be shared simply for the joy of it. Torvik has moved on to repairing a spear shaft, using sinew from the deer to lash the stone head in place. He works methodically, twisting and tightening until the sinew hums with tension. Beside him, another hunter sharpens a flake of obsidian, turning it into a blade that will eventually become part of a skinning knife. The tools that keep you alive don't last forever. Every day, something needs mending or replacing. On the far side of the fire, the marrow paste is being portioned into small hide packets. Each one is tied tightly, then pressed flat so they stack neatly in a woven basket. These packets will be carried on hunts, where stopping to cook could mean losing the trail of the prey, or becoming prey yourself. Children are now busy threading cleaned cattail roots onto thin sticks to set near the fire for drying. Their laughter mixes with the low hum of adult conversation. Every so often, someone tells a small joke or story, the kind with no clear beginning or end, meant only to fill the space between tasks. You take up the task of shelling beech nuts, working your stone against the hard shells until the pale kernels pop free. The repetitive motion lulls you, and you find your thoughts drifting to the stream earlier in the day. The plants you gathered, the way the cold water bit at your skin. Historians still argue whether people in your time measured days by tasks or by light. But for you, the two are the same. The sun moves, the work changes, and that's the shape of a day. The elder tending the herbs calls for you, and you bring her the last of the mint and wintergreen leaves. She arranges them with a precision that speaks of years of practice, ensuring they'll dry evenly without molding. These will hang in the cave for days, filling the air with their scent, a constant reminder of this trip to the stream. Outside, the night has deepened into full darkness. The faint glow of the moon picks out the edges of the trees, but inside the cave, the fire is the world. Its light touches every face, every tool, every bundle of food, turning the stone walls into a shifting mural of work and survival. By now, the honeycomb has softened enough to spread. A flat piece of dried meat is passed your way, and you smear a thin layer of honey across it. The mix of smoke, salt, and sweetness is almost overwhelming. A feast in a single bite. You chew slowly, letting the flavors linger as the warmth of the fire seeps deeper into your muscles. The processing continues without rush, but without pause. In this space, the boundaries between eating, working, and preparing blur completely. Tonight's meal is also next week's preparation. Every cut of meat, every dried root is both present sustenance and future security. The fire pops softly, sending a small spray of sparks upward before they vanish into the smoke hole above. The smell of roasting nuts deepens as Nira stirs them in a shallow clay bowl, their skins blistering and splitting under the heat. She tips a few into your palm, hot enough to make you juggle them from hand to hand before you can crack one open. The flavor is rich and earthy, a small comfort that spreads warmth beyond just your stomach. Near the back wall, two elders work side by side. one softening strips of hide over gentle steam, the other twisting fibers into cord. You know, this cord will be used for everything from lashing tools to binding bundles of herbs. The rhythmic twisting makes a faint rasping sound, blending with the steady murmur of voices and the occasional child's laugh. The marrow paste packets are finished now, stacked neatly in a basket and covered with a layer of dried grass. Torvik checks each one with a critical eye before giving a curt nod. These will be stored high on the ledge where mice can't reach them. Even in the safety of the cave, food security is never taken for granted. A few people shift from work to quiet conversation, but no one truly stops. You take over the drying rack, adjusting the strips of meat so the smoke can wrap around them evenly. Some pieces are nearly done, their surfaces firm and darkened, edges curling slightly. You test one by bending it, pliable but not soft. It will hang in the cooler air of the back wall by morning, lasting weeks if kept dry. Children have begun to grow drowsy, leaning against parents or curling up near the fire with small scraps of hide as blankets. One clutches a piece of honeycomb, nibbling slowly, the wax and sweetness keeping them awake just a little longer. You watch as their blinking slows, the day's excitement finally giving way to exhaustion. You take a moment to stretch, feeling the satisfying ache of muscles used well. The memory of the cold stream water, the scent of mint crushed between your fingers, the weight of the baskets on your shoulders, all of it lingers, woven into the warmth of this moment. Historians still debate whether people in your time thought of days as unique stories or simply as part of an endless cycle. For you, it's both. This day will fade into the rhythm of the seasons, but you'll remember it every time you taste wintergreen or feel frost under your boots. Nira joins you at the drying rack, her hands moving automatically as she flips and shifts the meat. "We've done well," she says quietly, glancing toward the baskets of roots, nuts, and herbs. "Enough for now." There's no triumph in her voice, only a calm satisfaction. The kind that comes from knowing tomorrow's work is already halfway done. As the final pieces of food are stored or set to dry, the pace of movement in the cave slows. The fire burns lower, throwing gentler light, the shadows softer now. People settle into places around the hearth, their hands idle for the first time since you returned from the stream. The elder who unwrapped the honeycomb earlier brings out a small clay cup of mint and yarrow tea. The steam curls upward, carrying a sharp, comforting scent. You sip slowly, the warmth moving through you in a steady wave. Your eyes feel heavier with each swallow, and the sounds of the cave fade into a kind of background hum. Tools being set down, quiet murmurs, the occasional soft crackle of the fire. You think about the day, the forest, the stream, the plants, the quiet cooperation of gathering and processing. Every part of it has been a piece of the same whole. Survival not as a desperate scramble, but as a constant weaving of skills, patience, and respect for what the land offers. And now, with the work done, the cave feels less like shelter and more like the center of a small, self-sustaining world. The air in the cave has settled into a steady, comforting warmth, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes your muscles loosen without you realizing. The fire burns low, more embers than flame now, glowing like scattered pieces of the sun trapped in stone. People are gathered close, some mending tools or clothing, others simply resting with eyes half closed. You sit cross-legged with a flat piece of hide across your lap, a handful of sinew threads coiled neatly beside you. In your hands is a stone scraper, its edge dulled from weeks of use. You run your finger along it, feeling the tiny chips and nicks, then begin the slow work of re-sharpening it against another stone. The sound, scrape, 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 is steady, almost hypnotic. Every now and then you glance at the edge, testing it with your thumb before returning to the rhythm. To your left, Torvik is binding the haft of a spear with fresh cord made earlier in the evening. His movements are deliberate, his thick fingers pulling the cord taut, knotting it with practiced efficiency. "This one's for the next hunt," he murmurs, though his eyes stay on the work. You nod, imagining the weapon flying through the cold air, striking true. Tools here aren't just objects, they're extensions of your body. The difference between eating and going hungry. Near the back wall, two elders sit with the youngest children, showing them how to carve small shapes from soft wood. The shavings fall in curls, catching the firelight like pale ribbons. One child holds up a roughly carved animal, maybe a deer, maybe a goat, and everyone laughs gently. It's play, but also training. Every carving teaches how to control a blade, how to feel the resistance of the wood. Beside the fire, Mira has started a small batch of glue using hide scraps and ash. The mixture simmers in a stone pot, releasing a faintly sour smell. She stirs it slowly with a stick, glancing toward you. "We'll need this for the new spearheads," she says. "Glue is precious, time-consuming to make, easy to waste if you're careless." You nod, storing the reminder away. The sound of the forest outside has shifted. The wind has dropped, and you can hear the faint hoot of an owl somewhere beyond the trees. From deeper in the distance comes a sharper noise, a crack, then silence. It might be ice shifting, or a branch falling, or the quiet step of something large moving through the dark. No one comments, but you see Torvik's eyes flick toward the entrance. In this world, even at night, you're never entirely at ease. Historians still argue whether evening in your time was truly a moment of rest or simply a continuation of work at a slower pace. Sitting here, you think it's both. The urgency fades, but the rhythm of the hands never stops. Sharpening, carving, binding, mending. The fire is a center, but it's also a workshop, a place where every tool and garment is quietly kept alive. You finish sharpening your scraper, the edge now smooth and even. Holding it up to the firelight, you see the faint gleam along its surface. This will last for days, maybe weeks, before it needs attention again. You set it aside, wrapping it in a scrap of hide to protect it from nicks, then reach for the small pouch of feathers you've been collecting. These will be fletching for arrows, each one cleaned, smoothed, and cut to size. The work is delicate, the kind you can only do when your hands are steady and the light is gentle. The smell of the glue has deepened, mingling now with the faint sweetness of drying honeycomb and the earthy undertone of herbs hanging nearby. This layered scent is the cave's identity. Every inhale reminding you of work done, food stored, and medicine prepared. One by one, people begin to settle deeper into their places. Tools are set aside, baskets covered, clothing folded near sleeping spots. The shadows on the walls grow longer as the fire burns lower, and the flicker of light across the cave paintings makes the figures seem to move, their painted limbs swaying with the dance of the flames. You shift closer to the fire, laying your pouch of feathers beside you and picking up one of the unfinished arrows from earlier in the week. Its shaft is smooth, straightened over steam days ago, and the flint tip has already been shaped and bound in place with sinew. All that's missing is the fletching. You select 3 feathers of similar size and length, laying them carefully along the shaft so that each one curves the same way. The positioning is everything. Too tight or too loose, and the arrow will fly crooked. Torvik leans over to watch for a moment, his eyes scanning your work. He doesn't speak, but when you finish tying the first feather with fine thread, he gives a short nod and returns to his own task. In your world, praise rarely comes in words. It's more often in the way someone trusts your work enough not to redo it. Across the fire, Nira has poured the finished glue into a small clay pot, setting it near the embers to keep it pliable. She uses a sliver of bone to scoop some onto a spearhead, spreading it thin before pressing the stone tight against the shaft. The glue darkens as it cools, binding the parts together as if they were grown from the same branch. You've seen weapons made this way last for years if cared for. Near the entrance, a few hunters are still awake, speaking in low voices about the tracks they saw today on the way back from the stream. Deer, small game, and something heavier that left wide, rounded prints in the mud. They trade guesses. Boar, maybe, or bear. Historians still debate whether ancient hunters tracked large animals mostly for food or for materials like hides and bones. In your group, the answer is obvious. Everything from meat to sinew to fat finds a use. And every successful hunt strengthens the group in more ways than one. The children who were carving earlier have fallen asleep in a warm tangle of blankets and limbs, their small wooden animals clutched in their hands. One has the tiny deer pressed to their cheek. Another has a rough-cut bird resting near their chin. Their slow, even breathing adds to the cave's quiet rhythm, a reminder that tomorrow's hunters and gatherers are already learning their first lessons. You return to your arrows, setting the second and third feathers in place, making sure the bindings are snug but not so tight that they crush the shaft. Each arrow you finish feels like a small promise to your future self, a tool waiting to bridge the gap between hunger and survival. When the last one is done, you lay them neatly beside the others, their feathered ends lined up like the tails of resting birds. The fire has burned lower still, the embers glowing with a deep, steady red. Shadows stretch high across the cave walls, where the ancient paintings wait in their silent, timeless watch. You find your eyes drawn to them, the spirals, the animals mid-leap, the lines that might be maps or might just be the artist's way of marking the world. Historians still argue over their meaning, whether they were meant as hunting magic, memory, or pure expression. Sitting here, you feel like it's all three. You rise slowly, crossing the cave to where a few people are gathered near the paintings. One of the elders has picked up a piece of ochre and is carefully filling in the curve of an antler, the red pigment catching the firelight like fresh blood. Another figure, a hunter with a raised spear, takes shape beside it. The act is deliberate but unhurried. There's no need to finish tonight. In this place, art is a slow conversation with stone. Someone passes you a shallow bowl of tea brewed from mint and wintergreen. The steam curls into your face, carrying the memory of the stream earlier in the day. You drink deeply, the warmth spreading from your mouth down into your chest. The taste is bright and slightly bitter, a clean counterpoint to the heavier flavors of the evening meal. From the back of the cave comes the faint sound of a flute, just a few low, wandering notes, played on a hollow bird bone. The melody doesn't follow any pattern, but it fits the moment perfectly, weaving into the crackle of the embers and the slow, steady breath of the people around you. You sit with your back against the smoothest part of the cave wall, cradling the tea bowl in both hands. The warmth seeps into your palms, and the faint bitterness on your tongue lingers pleasantly. The flute's drifting notes pull your thoughts outward, toward the past and future all at once. In the quiet, you imagine the generations before you who sat in this same place, drinking the same tea, listening to the same low music. The elder painting on the wall pauses to blow gently on the fresh ochre, fixing it into the stone's pores. The image now shows a deer mid-bound, the line of its back taut, legs extended as if frozen in eternal flight. Beside it, the hunter's figure is almost complete, a raised spear poised to strike. You find yourself tracing the painted spear with your eyes, noticing how it curves slightly, maybe by accident, maybe as a way to suggest motion. Historians still argue whether such details were symbolic or simply the result of working with uneven rock surfaces. Torvik has set his tools aside, leaning back with a quiet sigh. His eyes follow the fire's glow, though you suspect he's not really seeing it. The day's work leaves everyone in this half-dream state, balanced between exhaustion and the soft hum of accomplishment. Across from him, Nira hums softly as she wraps a finished spear in hide to protect it from moisture. The tune is old, wordless, a melody that moves like water. Near the sleeping children, one of the younger hunters sits cross-legged, working a bead from a piece of bone. The shavings fall like pale snow into their lap. They pause to hold the bead up to the light, inspecting the small hole drilled through its center. It will join others on a cord to make a necklace, part decoration, part talisman. You think of how even the smallest object here holds layers of meaning. Beauty, protection, skill. The fire dips lower, and someone stirs it gently with a long stick, coaxing the embers into a brighter glow. The flames flare just enough to throw sharper shadows across the painted walls. In the flicker, the hunters seem to advance, the animals to turn their heads. You know, it's only the light, but you also know that when you're out in the forest, these painted movements will return in memory, sharpening your focus when it matters most. You sip the last of your tea, the warmth spreading through your chest and stomach, softening the edges of the day's aches. Your mind drifts to tomorrow's tasks, checking the traps along the ridgeline, maybe repairing the woven fish basket. Every day has its weight, but knowing the rhythm helps. Work isn't a list here, it's a current you learn to swim in. An elder begins to speak, slowly, deliberately, her voice low enough that everyone must lean slightly closer to hear. She tells a story about a winter so harsh that the river froze solid, and the people survived only by following the tracks of a lone elk across the snow. Her hands move as she talks, shaping the air into antlers, hooves, and the curve of a bowstring. You've heard the story before, but it never feels old. It's part lesson, part memory, part quiet assurance that hardship can be endured. The flute joins the story, weaving notes between her words like threads in a net. The firelight glints off the damp edge of the ochre painting, making the hunter's spearhead glow faintly. Around you, people listen without interrupting, the soft crackle of the embers filling the pauses. The children, already half asleep, murmur in their dreams. When the story ends, the elder leans back, her hands folding in her lap. Silence settles again, but it's a full silence, thick with shared presence. You glance toward the entrance of the cave, where the night air drifts in cool and faintly scented with pine. Out there, the forest breathes its own rhythm, unbroken by human light or sound. In here, you feel the weight of the fire, the people, and the stone holding the day's work together like a net around you. The cave has grown quieter still, each sound now distinct. The pop of sap in the firewood, the slow inhale and exhale of someone dozing nearby, the faint rattle of dried herbs swaying from their cords when a draft drifts in. You shift your weight slightly on the grass bedding, feeling its uneven texture beneath you, the familiar scratchiness softened by the hide you've pulled over your shoulders. You glance toward the drying racks one last time. The strips of meat have darkened fully, the cattail roots stiffened into pale wands. The honeycomb is sealed away in bone containers, the herbs tied and hanging like fragrant pendants from the walls. There's a satisfaction in knowing that the work of the day hasn't just fed you. It has built a buffer against hunger and illness in the days ahead. In this life, security is something you make with your own hands. Torvik is already stretched out near the fire, one arm bent under his head, the other resting across his chest. Nira sits a little longer, sharpening the tip of an arrow until she's satisfied with its edge. When she finally sets it aside, she wraps it in a strip of hide and places it carefully next to her sleeping spot. Every tool here rests as if it, too, needs the night to recover. Your gaze drifts to the paintings again, the fresh ochre from earlier glowing faintly in the ember light. The deer still leaps, the hunter still waits, frozen mid-strike. The lines of their bodies seem almost to breathe when you blink, a reminder that these figures are both ancient and alive, as much a part of the group as anyone sitting here now. Historians still debate whether such art was sacred ritual or simple storytelling, but to you, it feels like a bridge, one that links the past to the present, one flicker of firelight at a time. Someone stirs the embers, coaxing them into one last flare before letting them sink back into their slow, steady glow. The light softens, the air thick with the scent of smoke and pine resin. You pull the hide tighter around you, shifting until your shoulder finds the smooth groove in the stone that fits your body perfectly, worn by years of use. The flute has gone quiet, replaced by the deep, steady sound of sleet filling the cave. Beyond the entrance, the forest keeps its own watch, the night creatures moving in silence. You feel the pull of rest now, heavy and warm, your mind tracing the day backward. Forest paths, cold streams, baskets of herbs, hands working beside yours, the fire always at the center. Your last thought before closing your eyes is simple but certain. In this place, in this rhythm, nothing is wasted, not time, not effort, not the smallest scrap of what the land offers. The cave, the people, the work. They hold you as surely as the hide over your shoulders and the stone under your head. And tomorrow, when the fire is stoked again, the cycle will begin anew. The embers glow faintly now, soft points of light breathing in the dark. The air inside the cave has cooled, but the heat trapped in the stone walls lingers, wrapping the space in a quiet, steady comfort. You can hear the smallest sounds, the shift of a blanket, the murmur of someone turning in sleep, the far-off call of an owl outside. Your own breathing falls into rhythm with the rest of the group, slow and deep. Each exhale feels like it carries away a little of the day's weight, leaving only the ease of the present moment. The hides over you are heavy enough to feel like an anchor, keeping you grounded in this space, in this warmth. Images from the day drift through your mind like slow-moving shadows. The curve of the deer's leap on the cave wall, The golden spill of honeycomb under firelight, the cool grip of the stream on your ankles, the scent of mint crushed between your fingers. Each memory feels smoothed by time already, edges softened until they blur gently into one another. Outside, the forest remains dark and vast, but here, within stone and firelight, there is no urgency. The night stretches wide and calm, a space where nothing needs to be done and nowhere needs to be reached. You let your eyes close fully now, the flicker of ember light fading behind your lids. The last thing you notice is the warmth along your cheek where the hide meets your skin, and the faint, reassuring pressure of the ground beneath you. In this place, in this moment, everything is still. Everything is enough. And as the cave breathes around you, you drift into sleep, steady as the fire's glow.